Rotogrinders, Dean here. That's Dean 7904. That is the daily fantasy handle around the industry. We're basically halfway home, more or less. Week number 8 NFL DFS. We've made it. Starting, of course, 10:30 on the East Coast, 7:30 West Coast, 9:30 Tennessee time. This is Grinders Live. We're here for the next 2.5 hours, taking you guys straight up the lock. Get comfortable, ask some questions in chat. What up, chat? Do like, do subscribe, turn on notifications, all that good stuff. We'll be knocking out your questions later on. Myself, I'll be asking them to, Andre, what's up, Andre? How are things in your world? I know you're excited about potentially attending a football game later on today. What are your thoughts as far as today's slate?
It's very tricky, but I feel good about it. Hopefully, Joe Burrow makes me some money back while I'm at the game, especially. But I think it's going to be a good one. Some tough plays, some tough decisions you have to make. I think a little bit, but overall, I think it should be a great slate. Hopefully, not too high scoring, but high scoring enough.
It's a weird one because there's no Chiefs, there's no Lamar, there's no Kyler. There's no high totals, but 51 is the highest total on the board with Tennessee and Indianapolis. I think it's the highest total as far as the slate. It is 12 games. We have a couple more teams coming back from bye, not 10 like we had the last couple of weeks or so. Grant, jump in here. I know you're rocking you're celebrating Halloween with the Eyes Wide Shut mask. Fidelio, by the way, is the password in case you need to, if you want to get into the secret room.
I believe it's New England clam chowder.
No, it's Fidelio.
Is that the red or the white one?
The Eyes Wide Shut, ironically enough, one of my favorite Christmas movies. Not so much my favorite Halloween movie, but yeah, Grant, how are things in your world?
Oh, good. I went to a Maxim party last night, so I slept in today until 5 a.m. Wild stuff. Yeah. No,
can you give me an anecdote about like a 30-second anecdote at the Maxim party? What happened? What went down there?
They were dropping free bets from a blimp, making people jump for it like a TV show. Some people got taken out. I got the most free bets out of it.
You throw some bows
there, huh?
You throw some bows?
No, I did not. But I made like $800.
Nice. Did you really?
Yeah. No, the first blimp, I see the blimp. I'm like, hey, where's that going to drop? He's like, next to that woman in the orange dress. I'm like, okay, stand over there, and it drops, and it drops all in one little bunch, and I just grab it. And everyone was pissed at me, and I made like $800.
You max entered, man. It's only one entry per. That's not fair.
No. I also got a free $100 Ticketmaster gift card.
Oh, geez. What concert do you want to see? I hesitate to ask.
Shania Twain.
That is. Don't you already think? I think you already have tickets to that, don't you?
Don't have tickets yet for it, but now I can get them for free because of Maxim Bet.
That might get you a half a ticket, I think. I feel like she's not $50. There's no way Shania's just $50 these days.
I mean, 70, but
oh, okay, that's pretty reasonable. All right, what are your thoughts today as far as this slate? Give me the overview, Grant. 12 gamer. We kind of touched on it.
Football shall be played.
football will definitely be played. That is, that is some dynamite analysis for sure.
I mean, the chalk is going to be chalky today. That is accurate. And I don't know if it's a great idea to go with the chalk. I mean, like you said, there's not really a ton of high total games. There's only one game over 50, two game over 50. So trying to just jam in the so-called chalk when realistically, like, they're great pivots. And there are games that are projected to be close, like very close, like 2-3 point spreads that people are just going to be like, no, that's ugly. I don't want it. Where realistically, you should probably be looking at pretty heavily, considering this is football. Like, we thought we knew things. Like, if you go back 4 weeks, like, two interesting quarterbacks are Darnold and Bridgewater.
Yeah.
4 weeks ago, they were fantastic plays, and they were going to be fantastic plays the rest of the season. Now, everyone assumes they're absolutely terrible plays.
They are who we thought they were.
Yeah, well, they could go back to being who we didn't think they were.
Well, it's only about today. All we care about is today. They could be terrible and have a great day today, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, and today, who drops, like, there's two guys with very, very good matchups who happen to be quote unquote terrible, which might be accurate, but like, literally, if we would have seen this Washington-Denver matchup 4 weeks ago, Teddy Bridgewater would be the mega chalk. Am I wrong?
I don't know. I haven't really played Teddy all season long, but he's steadily
the guy who was crushing it, who had one of the highest ADOTs in the league, who was consistently putting up 25 plus points. And
I thought it was small sample size stuff and fraudulent personally.
What?
Sure you did. I don't believe you in that.
I don't think I played Teddy all season long. Maybe I'm wrong for not having played him all season long, but I don't think I have.
Yeah. Well, literally. Okay. So Darnold, you thought Darnold was good. You thought he was the best running back in the league.
I like his the guys you can the best running back in the league. Wasn't he leading the league in rushing touchdowns at some point?
He was. He was for a while.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they play 17 games, I suppose. And even then, the sample size isn't big enough. Andre, you made a big reaction. I guess you're on Teddy as well.
I'm not. I actually just loaded him for my player pool, but I like the play of Teddy. I just can't get to him because I have too many other quarterbacks I like more than him. But I like his pairing with Jerry Jeudy when coming back if he's 100% healthy. That's to me very important. But I also like Courtland Sutton a lot today. He's one of my favorite receivers to target.
Yeah, buddy.
I like Sutton too, and I think he's gonna be fairly low owned, and he's an interesting tournament play as well. And great, you touched on it as far as ownership, and we're gonna kind of run it down. We'll show our lineup HQ tool off here. Devin, we always talk about him being a fabulous multitasker. That's one of his tasks. He's showing off some of the tools here. And if you want to use the tools at your own leisure, how do you do that? Get yourself $10 off the first month of RG Premium. If you want just football, just NFL, by all means, have at it. Or you can get all the sports: NFL, college football, college basketball, NBA, golf, MMA, all that good stuff. Everything with the exception of NASCAR.
We didn't compliment your costume today.
What was
you're Bill Belichick, right?
Yes. Hold on. Let me put my hood on and like a whole. I got to look like a curmudgeon too. I don't. Can I do the curmudgeon? I don't know. I can't do the Bill Belichick. I'm upset about something.
I mean, you just smiled, so I guess you're not Bill Belichick.
He smiled on record. Allegedly he's like a really funny guy, like behind closed doors. And yeah, I once heard him on an interview with Howard Stern, and that was interesting because like he's a huge fan, but he wouldn't play along at the same time, But all right, we have to talk about this slate. And Grant, you were talking about ownership, right? As far as the slate today, and the cap is really, really tight on DK. It's hard. You're not going to like your lineups, man. I hate my cash lineups.
Really? Why would you like it?
Why would
the mid-tier is all just great?
No, there's no cheap receivers. Like there's no cheap receiver to like. Like you could play Van.
Well, you don't have to go up to Derrick Henry like you do have to every other week.
Well, Cooper Kupp is like an instant 30 points. If I want Cooper Kupp, I have to scrape the barrel, and there's no barrel to scrape because it's just awful. And how do I not play Cooper Kupp? But like at the same time, we don't know what's
because you can play Swift, you can play Henderson, you can play Godwin, you can play
Swift's not cheap. Moore. He's over 7K.
Who?
Swift's over 7K on DK.
Fine, then play any of the other cheap running backs. I mean, like there's a bunch of mid-tier running backs. I don't love Chuba is one of the problems too. Like Hubbard is just like he's one of the guys. Eli Mitchell.
He doesn't catch the football. He's like Venus DeMilo out there. He's got no hands. They won't throw him the ball for some reason.
Well, if you get 100 yards and a touchdown, that's 16 plus points right there.
Well, that's a great if. Am I guaranteed that?
I mean, based on sample size, he does it 50% of the time. 50% of the time, it works every time.
That's what I was waiting for. What's the name of that cologne? Do you recall?
Sex Panther.
There you go. Nicely done. Yeah, it's just
put your hood back on. You look like the Emperor.
All right. Is that
if he had made better or worse life choices?
Let's talk about the quarterbacks, Grant. It's pretty clear that like the two top quarterbacks, again, a lot of the top guys are on the slate this week. Allen against the Dolphins. Hurts gets there every single week, but it's always like this. It's a tilt fest until the fourth quarter where he absolutely crushes and he's playing catch up.
He's got Blake Bortles syndrome.
In theory, yeah. Hey, you know what? Bortles combat. If you score in the fourth quarter, there weren't just funny fantasy points in the first quarter. I think I heard what Reeves said, like 54% of his fantasy points were from his legs alone. It's crazy, but against Detroit, in theory, he's supposed to score some fantasy points in the first three quarters. There's also talk of him getting benched for Minshew, which makes no sense in the world to me. I don't think that's happening. Why would you do that? Brady just keeps throwing 4 or 5 touchdowns every single week. He's a greedy Gus. He wants the MVP. Stafford, same deal, another pocket passer, but against Houston with a big team total. Herbert, he's back in our lives. He's pretty solid. He's going to be kind of ignored. Burrow kind of ignored as well, too. And then there's some cheapies like Darnold, like Ryan. I suppose if you want to play Teddy, you could do that, too. What's your assessment as far as the quarterbacks this week? Because it's looking like Hurts is your cash game guy in DK. It's probably Allen on Fanduel, one of those two, depending on how your build goes. Thoughts here as far as quarterbacks?
I mean, I'd have no problem just eating the chalk with Hurts. Like, I'm fine with that. Again, he does end up getting there, get down with his legs. The other guys I'm a little bit more hesitant about, like Stafford, Josh Allen, Brady, all guys that are chalky that I don't know if they fully deserve it. Stafford, yes, he went just nuts last week, but that was a revenge game. Henderson, I think, could be the guy, and I think that you end up either going with Stafford or Henderson in most of your lineups, and I'm more towards Henderson. Like, Houston's bad. And I think they're going to run the ball a lot. Henderson's bell cow. Should end up doing well. Josh Allen's in a win game, and they're pretty big favorites. I know that he's gotten there most of the times this season.
What's the win like? It's nothing severe, right? I looked at the roster report. Okay. You care about that?
A little bit when it's with a chalk player. If it was with a lone guy, I'm like, yeah, great. No, I'll play him. With a chalk guy, it's a little bit different. Brady hasn't had a ton of success going up against New Orleans. I don't know if you remember the game where he put up like 2 fantasy points last year. That was against New Orleans. We have a 3-game sample size. It's a really interesting spot where you can fade him and you're probably all right. Everyone just assumes, oh, Brady's going to get there. Might not happen. Matt Ryan, versus Carolina, a defense that has actually been pretty decent, although in recent weeks, they definitely have not been great. They still are a defense that is allowing below average fantasy points to quarterbacks, wide receivers, tight ends, and just an overall good defense. And Matt Ryan, he might not hit. Like Justin Herbert, next guy up against New England, anything can happen. Like Herbert's been up and down. So you end up getting to the lower range where you get guys with just as much upside and drastically lower ownership. We got Lawrence going up against Seattle. That's just not good. We got Darnold going up against Atlanta. That's not good defensively. We got Burrow, who's been just fantastic so far this season. They're letting him sling. We got Wentz going up against Tennessee in the highest total game. We got Tannehill on the other side. And then we got Bridgewater, who was pretty darn good earlier on the season, getting one of his best pass catchers back, going up against a Washington team that is giving up a ton of fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. I think they're currently
the most
first in the league.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
kind of a pass funnel there.
Yeah. And 2% owned, cheap, multiple guys you can pair him with, like Fant, Sutton, Judy, Patrick, all in the offense. Play any one of these guys. Like Bridgewater is a great play at incredibly low ownership. Darnold, I was expecting to be the chalk. He's certainly not. Going up against Atlanta, great play. And then Wentz and Tannehill, who offer you a huge amount of upsides. Like you can look at Wentz's numbers, but San Francisco, bomb cyclone. Houston, blowout. Baltimore, 400 yards. Miami, Tennessee,
Bomb
LA, and
cyclone.
Seattle.
This made me laugh. Go ahead.
The first 4 games of the season, he was not on one bad ankle, but 2 bad ankles. Now he gets T.Y. Hilton back in the lineup, most likely. I don't know. Have we got confirmation on that?
He's expected to play. Like, I mean, I don't know how, if anything, he could stretch the field in theory and maybe open stuff up for Pittman. But yeah, it's good having him out there because he's probably a better option than like Pascal as far as a threat. they all might be out there to some degree. Hey, why do you think Darnell was going to be the chalk? He got benched last week for the XFL dude. Like he's been terrible for 3 straight weeks. I know it's a good matchup in a dome, and he's kind of cheap, but he wouldn't be chalky. How do you trust Darnell these days? I'm playing him too to some extent, but I didn't expect him to be like popular.
I mean, yeah, that's fine. You can do whatever you want, but I expected him to be popular because of matchup versus Atlanta.
Let's bring Andre in here. Andre, your thoughts as far as quarterbacks? We basically kind of run them all down. I saw Alex in chat talking about just playing Josh Allen naked. Like Allen's going to crush against the Dolphins. It's sort of hard to figure out who to pair him with. He can run the ball in 1 or 2 times. That's something he can do as well. Diggs has been more disappointing this season than not. I will say his price on Fanduel is kind of appealing. It's 7.3K. It's kind of reflecting how his season's been a little bit rough from his personal scale. Andre, what are your thoughts as far as quarterbacks? There's somebody you're kind of like locking in on, like well over the field. Somebody you're kind of scratching out as far as maybe a chalk guy you're not really into.
Well, there's 2 guys I'm going to be well over the field on, and they're in the same game, and that's the Atlanta Falcons, Carolina Panthers game with Matt Ryan and Sam Darnold. The Blitz love these guys today. And now I started digging into it and wondering why. Obviously, we know it's like one of the fastest game, if not the fastest game on the slate as far as pace wise. But like you said, Darnold, he's going against a defense in Atlanta that doesn't have a pass rush really at all, or get to the quarterback, and they can't defend the pass at all really either. So everyone's going to be low and not on Sam Darnold from what our projections are showing. So to me, why not take advantage of that spot and get on it and see what happens? And we know Robbie Anderson has been bad, but I like going back to him today too. Again, I'm going to be a little bit over the field on him, but it to me it's just a great spot for both of those quarterbacks to probably go over the total possibly in that type of game. And Matt Ryan has been obviously playing well the past 3 to 4 weeks too of the season. So to me, it's like a perfect storm to me that's lined up for each other to possibly be a possible maybe shootout game potential. So I like that. And a lot of the balls also because I watched actually the game last week when Sam Darnold got benched against New York. They were dropping a lot of the passes. Like he was throwing them right in their chest. And,
name names. Call out Robbie Anderson.
No, Robbie Anderson did. David Moore did too as well. A couple of them, like on big downs where they had it was like 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 4, they were just dropping passes. So to me, I like just going to that spot and just taking the chance of going back to them and see what happens. That's one thing that we have to do in this community too, is have a short memory. You can't just be a little bit biased, like I did last week and got beat with Joe Burrow. But yeah, those 2 are my favorite quarterbacks to go with for sure, and I love their targets. I also do love getting a little bit to Matt Stafford, just being at the field and a little bit over the field on him, just because just in case the pass, the running game doesn't work. But Matt Stafford can still get there, I think, with 3 touchdowns like the first half and putting up 300 yards to the point where they can run with Henderson. So I don't even mind running some Matt Stafford Henderson with Cooper Kupp stacks or Robert Wood stacks or Van Jefferson stacks, whichever way you feel the running back is going, whatever receiver you feel like is going to go pair well best with them. So that's what I like getting to as well. Obviously, Jalen Hurts, I'm going to definitely have some exposure to him for sure. That game, I like that game a lot too. It just concerns me because like you said, he doesn't really turn on to the 4th quarter. Detroit sneakily has been, they've been very competitive in most of their games, if not all their games this year. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a Detroit upset and they get their first win today. Just putting it out there. But Jalen Hurts, I think, is still a great play. Someone that you should definitely be on the at the field, if not a little bit over on for sure. And then Joe Burrow's my next guy up that I love to get to one guy that I play every single week. I'm going to be double the field on him for sure, especially against the Jets who have just not been playing that well. I know their defensive numbers show differently, and they do have, to me, I think, a decent defense, but I also feel like they haven't played no one that has really good talent, I should say. So I love getting to Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, who got I think 15 targets last week.
Yeah.
And Tyler Boyd as well. Do you even pair him with the tight ends which they are horrible at guarding tight ends, which I'm looked up and they have, I think, a good amount of fantasy points to tight ends. So I think I don't even mind that at all too, especially since Joe Burrow's been targeted in the past couple of weeks. So I definitely get into that. Josh Allen, I'm going to be a little bit under on, just because I think the game could could blow out either way. Not either way, but blow out more so with Buffalo. But he hasn't gotten there. Like he's gotten there majority of the time. But I guess the last time they played, it wasn't competitive, and he only could put up 17 fantasy points, draft DK points, 17 completions. That was actually probably his worst fantasy game of the year so far. Because Dolphins don't have a bad defense; they have a pretty decent defense, in my opinion. So I don't mind being a little bit under on Josh for sure. Carson Wentz is a wild card to me. I'm going to be at the field with him, I think, just because the spot. This game is that game. I thought it was. It does have the potential to be a shootout, with being the highest total of 51 overall. But I don't know. For some reason, I just see that game possibly like being played at a slow pace, especially now that we know that what's his name is out, Julio Jones. So I think Tennessee is going to want to run the ball a little bit more now, being that they're going to have only have one like main receiver with AJ Brown to work with. So I like for them to probably control the clock more. So I'm a little bit under on Wentz than I was earlier, because before I was going to be over the field on him, because I would expect this to be a more of a passing game. But it's just hard for me to see that now, just based on like I said, what happened with the injuries and how I think the game script is going to go from there.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point, by the way, because I just pulled up Cardi's, the blitz and the game factors and the gameplay projection. So just kind of get an idea, 130.8 is the biggest number as far as plays expected today. That's Carolina and Atlanta. The lowest projection as far as games is Tennessee, Indianapolis at 120.3. And it's going to be a fairly popular game for different reasons, obviously. I did see Lewis in chat asking about Fanduel quarterback, and I think that's worth touching on. So like on DK, you're going to want to play some of the cheapies because, again, the cap is a little bit tighter, kind of opens some stuff up. If you guys are playing on Yahoo today, and you should be playing on Yahoo today, you should be playing in their $1 million Halloween baller. There is a guaranteed $200,000 in overlay, guaranteed. If it sells out, it's currently only 75, 76, 77% full. There's 500 spots remaining. IMAX entered this bad boy. As a DFS player, I hope it doesn't sell out, but as somebody like honestly, just somebody that gives advice or somebody, this should be where you should be playing. Like, honestly, it's absolutely ridiculous. $200,000 they're giving away. There's no rake and an additional $200,000 in overlay. I know they're sponsoring here. We're going to let you guys know about our promo here. Use the promo code Grinders25 for a free $25 bonus in your first deposit. Again, there's the $150,000 Yahoo Cup that's been going on. Monday night, Thursday night, Sunday night, they have big showdown slates as well, too. The single gamer that's going down later tonight, Thursday and Monday as well. There, you're going to be able to spend up with the big quarterbacks also, because the salary cap's a little bit looser. Fanduel, the tricky thing is, and I'll bring Grant in this, then we'll kind of move on as far as running backs. But the thing with Fanduel is just the difference from the expensive quarterbacks to the not as expensive quarterbacks is not as much. It's sort of tightened as far as the gap. Like you save more on DK, so it's more tempting. That's why for me, I'm finding it hard to move away from Hurts, move away from Allen. Of course, ownership suggests this, or is going to show that as well too. The people over us recognizes that when they're building lineups. Grant, your thoughts, final thoughts as far as quarterbacks, and give a thought as far as specific to Fanduel, because I saw I was answering Luis's question there. It's just a little bit harder for me to do it. Of course you can, but it's a little bit harder just because you're not spending that much more and you're getting the better.
I mean, isn't that Fanduel with every single sport, every single day?
Yeah, it's sort of, it depends, but yeah, that's a reasonable take. But that's, you take what the site gives you, and then you got to be able to adjust appropriately.
I mean, yes, you take what the site gives you if you're talking about cash games, but tournaments, like, ownership is a thing. And I mean, one of the most profitable things to do on Fanduel in a lot of sports can be leave money on the table or go away from the shot, because everyone's like, oh, I can fit this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, because there's bad pricing. So anytime there's bad pricing, it makes sense to play the worst plays. When there's good pricing, it makes sense to play the better plays.
Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Matthew Stafford are taking up, about 43% of the ownership today. If you want to add Brady into the conversation, I'm doing it really quickly off the dome. That's about 55 or so. So those
four quarterbacks. You can do math.
Well, I'm on the fly. I didn't know there would be math, to be honest, but on the fly, close enough. You guys can check. I'm sure Devin showed it up on the screen as well, too, as far as the lineup page. It's showing the ownership. We got to move on to talk about running backs here, Grant. And, this is another one specific to DK, even on Fanduel. Like, Henderson had a rough week last week. Who cares? He's checks all the boxes in a dome, getting all the usage there. I know Sonny Michel's kind of still lurking to some degree. Maybe he'll siphon a touchdown at the goal line, but Henderson seems to be the guy. They're throwing some wheel routes for him. Last week I think 2 or 3 times they try to make it happen. That's why I don't hate the idea, and Andre was talking about as far as playing Henderson with Stafford and just in theory get all of those Rams touchdowns. They put up 4 or 5. You got a piece of every single one of them. The price on DK is absolutely goofy. The Yahoo price is really, really good as well. The matchup, of course, is good against Houston, big time favorite. That's where we got to start, and he's going to be the highest owned running back, I believe, on every single site. Talking about Henderson and kind of work your way down.
I mean, Henderson, absolutely fantastic play. Even with the ownership, I don't care. I'm eating it. I'm playing a decent amount of him. He's going up against Houston. He's far too underpriced. He's one of the few bell cow backs on the entire slate. You don't see him too often anymore, so he's in there. Taylor, another guy. Snap shares not as high as we would like it, but the touches are there, around 20 every single week. Going up against a Tennessee team that's not great against the run. Swift, matchup proof, gets targeted so heavily in the receiving game. High scoring game, projected to be close. He's going to get there, most likely. Mixon, Hubbard, Fournette, Mitchell, all guys getting stuff. I don't have any problem playing any of them. But I think where you find the value is in the lower owned guys. Just talk about a few. Patterson, 70% snap share now.
The volume's there. Like, assuming it's real, assuming it continues and Davis is going the other direction, he looks pretty appealing, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's getting it done both in the receiving and in the rushing game. They've split him out wide. They played Davis and Patterson in there together. Patterson is a big threat in the red zone. Like, Patterson is the guy here now. Like, we've been worried about snap count all season. Like, now he's in like the 80th percentile of snap share among running backs, something like that. Like, he's getting it done there. Najee Harris, a little bit higher price, but the work has absolutely been there and will continue to be there. And the PPR upside is just huge. James Robinson is one of the best plays on the slate at sub 10% ownership, going up against one of the worst, like absolute worst run defenses so far this year. I think they're giving up the second most fantasy points to running backs. Like, he's a fantastic play.
I'm afraid that game's gonna be a bit of a slog. I don't. Seattle has sent the game of football back to the 1930s or so.
Okay, no, yeah, yes, they do like to run the ball, but like everyone's assuming Geno Smith is absolutely terrible. Maybe he's not good, but like the first game against the Rams, like he was actually looking pretty decent. He's had matchups against the Steelers and the Saints since. Of course, He's not going to look good. Like, those are tough matchups. But just 1 or 2 more running backs like Nick Chubb, priced right around Henderson. Like, I get it's against Pittsburgh, but he doesn't even have Hunt there. Like, yes, he's not going to.
What do you expect his usage is going to be? This is one of the questions that I have that I would love to know. Like, is he going to get 70% of the snaps right out the gate coming back from injury?
I mean, I would assume so. I can't be certain. Like, Dearness Johnson did look pretty good, but still, for tournament, you're getting him at 4%. And then Khalil Herbert. The Bears do not want to pass the ball. Like, they absolutely do not want to pass the ball. And it's advantageous not to pass the ball. This guy's gotten 20 touches pretty much plus on average over the last 3 games. He's looked great. He's cheap, and he's entirely unowned.
And he ran the ball against Tampa, which nobody can do.
Yeah. No, I thought it was impossible. Apparently it is not. Like, Khalil Herbert is an incredible play that's going to draw no ownership. So, like, while I like the top 6 guys, the difference in actual, like, projections isn't drastic enough to be that much different from their ownership. Like, it's just so weird that everyone just wants, like, 6-7 guys, and they're completely ignoring all the rest of them, including the spend-ups with Henry and Kamara.
Andre, jump in here. Give me a take on Henry, because Henry doesn't seem to be terribly popular this week, by his standards. Just again, the cap is pretty tight. If you have one big spend, it might not be Henry. Of course, he's a guy that can always break the slate, in a dome against Indianapolis. Any thoughts as far as the running backs that have been thrown out there? And feel free to add some new names to the conversation.
Yeah, Grant pretty much lists off almost every running back that I love today on the slate, including more so the lower owned guys, exposed guys. But Derrick Henry, as you mentioned, we were talking about before, he's going to be. I mean, he's coming at 11% own, 12% own on DK at least, and we know it's just because his price point 8.9K is expensive to pay for him, especially on this slate. And like you said, the salary being so tight. So I don't even see myself getting that much Derrick Henry, but I also don't see myself getting much of that game either, as well. But I'll probably have him in some runbacks where I have Wentz going. I'm assuming. If I'm not running one of the running AJ Brown there. So to me, I think he's a definitely good option. Someone that's probably going to be a little bit overlooked if you don't mind spending. If you think you have some value somewhere else where you can spend low on, then take that chance and go with Derrick Henry. But he also has not put up at least this year so far a monster game against Indy. But we know what his upside is, and it's as high as anyone on the slate. Only person that could probably match him is Cooper Kupp. But Michael Carter is someone on the low end that I don't know if anyone really mentioned. I don't think Grant really mentioned him. And someone I like just in that Cincinnati game, just because I know the checkdowns are going to be there, and that's what Mr. White, who the quarterback is starting for the Jets now, seems to do a lot of checkdowns. So to me, I like him a lot today, and getting probably running a lot of them in my Joe Burrow stacks. Another guy that I think that was been like digging into all week, who I should have played last week and I didn't, is Myles Gaskin. Just in the run back with the Buffalo stacks, because I know he's getting a lot more of that receiving work now in there. So, and he's been getting some touches. So to me, I think he's a good option. Khalil Herbert is someone I love getting over the field on, especially if he's going to continue to be this low on. Is San Francisco, we know, has a tough defense, but to me, like you said, if you're able to run against Tampa Bay, you can pretty much run against anybody. So to me, Khalil Herbert is someone I definitely want to be able to field on. I like Chuba Herbert. I like getting the Chuba Hubbard today.
Sell me on Hubbard because I'm apprehensive.
Well, he's in a match against Atlanta, so that's a plus right there. But he also, besides getting getting the attempts, which is about probably on average about like 14 attempts, 15 attempts per game. He's also getting about 4 to 5 targets per game too as well. So to me, that has an upside right there. And he could possibly have a floor, I would say, of around, I want to say he could have a floor probably of around, hopefully 10 if he 10 maybe possibly in this matchup, and not and possibly a ceiling of honestly probably like 30, maybe 35 if he can get in the box, which I think he definitely will today. And another guy so to me, I think he's a good play just for that. And plus, like I said, it's the fastest paced game on the slate. So that's why I think also he's a great play. Damien Harris against going against the Chargers. We know the Chargers they don't want to get beat deep. They will let you run the ball on them. So to me, I'm double the field on Damien Harris. I'm going to be over whatever percentage on we have him at, because I think that's what Bill Belichick will do. Just take advantage of your weakness. And if that's what you want to do, you want to allow them to run the ball, that probably plays more into Bill Belichick's hands, so that way he can also manage the clock too as well, and keep the ball away from Herbert and try to have him pretty much just throw the ball down the field all the time to catch up if the New England ends up being up from just running the ball the whole majority of the game. So I love getting to him a lot today. And I do like obviously, we mentioned Darrell Henderson. Nick Chubb, I think it's a phenomenal play. First game back. We don't know what his touches are going to be, but to me, I think he's someone that you definitely have to get in and get a little bit of exposure to. James Robinson, I think, like Grant said, is probably the best running back play on the slate, if not the top like 3. Like Seattle, their rushing defense is horrible. Like is really bad, and James Robinson is getting pretty much all the work there now. So to me, I love playing him and getting well over the field on him. To me, he should be one of the main guys you pair him with Henderson today, and just pretty much find other places to go. And that's a good price to play in the mid range. Joe Mixon too is another phenomenal play that I love to get to a lot of, and I think we have an 18% on. I think he might go a little bit. I thought he's gonna be more of like overlooked, but maybe not more than I expected. But I think you should get a little bit of him, maybe be a little bit under on him today, and try to get more of James Robinson as a pivot, who's $200 less as well on DK.
All right. If there's somebody that you guys are thinking about and you haven't heard us talk about, can't talk about everybody, obviously, we're just kind of setting the table. Ben and Erik are following us. And of course, right up the lock, there's crunch time, 12:30, answering all your questions. We want to answer some of your questions as well, too. Fire off your questions in chat. put a QQ in front of it so Devin can pull it, give us all the details. Is it for cash? Is it for tournament? Yahoo, FanDuel, DraftKings, single entry, all that mass multi-entry, all that good stuff. A couple things I want to mention before we move on. I want to talk about Gainwell for Philadelphia. I think he's kind of sort of someone interesting. With the backfield opening up with the injury to Sanders.
Are we sure it's going to change much?
Yeah,
well, that's a comment because he's we're seeing it with 14% owned, and they also just pass the ball a lot anyway. And they also brought in the guy, the siphoner, Jordan Howard, just can steal those touchdowns to the 1 yard line. Who knows how much he's going to play
on Boston Scott.
In Boston Scott's lurking. So I guess
I wouldn't be surprised if Boston Scott just turns into Miles Sanders, not being good, but just takes over the full Miles Sanders role, and Gainwell's role does not change.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me either. I just think he's interesting because people are flocking to him. Again, he's pretty cheap on DK, and he's I think he's actually like good and talented, but doesn't matter if you're not getting the opportunity. I kind of besmirched Eli Mitchell, but I do like him, especially on FanDuel, where he's just super cheap and just the way he plays. He's better conducive for the scoring system over there. Jonathan Taylor, do you want to mention his snap count has gone up every single week since week 2? 45, 48, 51, 52, 65, 69% last time out. I actually bet him over on Prize Picks, I think 20.5 yards receptions. I have him over for Prize Picks. No, it's like 13.5 receiving yards. I have over on that. And you mentioned Andre Carter. I bet him over 20.5 receiving yards on Prize Picks because I suspect, like you suspect, a fair bit of checkdowns as well. There was one more that I wanted to focus on, but I think I kind of lost the name somewhere. But doesn't matter. Well, we're going to talk about some receivers in a second. Grant, give me the rundown as far as receivers for you. You are on mute, my friend.
Receivers catch the football.
Yes, they do. Who's going to catch the football the most and run with it the farthest?
I mean, the interesting thing is going to be the Tampa Bay situation. I don't really want to play Mike Evans going up against Lattimore. Most people are the same way. Like he's just crushed Evans every single time. It's not like Evans is going unowned. Like the interesting thing is the top 5, 6, 7 owned guys. Godwin, like I said, New Orleans might actually shut down Tom Brady. It can happen. It happened last year. He didn't really do great in any given game versus New Orleans. So eating chalk with Godwin, not a great idea. Ridley, might realistically be the third target in this offense behind Patterson and Pitts. So 20% ownership, not great. Kupp is just a monster. He's 9K, but dude, I have nothing bad to say about Kupp. Pittman, Hilton's coming into this lineup, and if I'm playing Pittman, I'm probably playing Wentz with him. Cooks, incredibly volatile. He's going to get targets, but does not have a great quarterback throwing to him. He's going up against one of the toughest pass defenses.
He's also mad, apparently, that Ingram got traded. At least according to his tweet, it just kind of lined up with it. But maybe he gets traded too. I think the deadline's coming up this week. Wouldn't he? I
think they said he's going to stay.
I don't know. Who knows what his situation is? But did you have a thought on that? Because he's popping into models, and he's a great run back as well too. He's the clear run back. Oh, the guy I wanted to say actually, and I probably shouldn't say it out loud. But $10 on Yahoo is David Johnson. And the absence of Ingram, David Johnson could be a guy that he's really, really cheap on Yahoo. He's still minimum. He's cheap on DK too. I think he's like 4K or so on DK. I don't want to. That's when I was holding those kind of plays. That was one I was going to talk about before. There's a reason why I forgot about it. But as a run back in that Ram game, the absence of Ingram, I know what's his name is still lurking. The guy from Denver. I'm forgetting his name. The running back. They still have another guy.
Bill Lindsay.
Yeah, but we might see Johnson was the clear guy right there after Ingram or next to Ingram.
Speaking of Johnson, Deontay.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. I thought you were going somewhere else with that. My brain.
You sick man. Deontay Johnson, he's probably gonna get 10 plus targets. He's he's the pivot off of the chalky guys in Ridley and Godwin. He's 6.7.
Highest owned receivers because Denzel Ward is out today as well. So who's going to guard him? Who's going to stop him? I like
this guy gets it. This guy gets it.
He's going to be. I love Deontay Johnson today.
My thought is the Cleveland. I don't know. That Cleveland offense. Beckham's hurt and their quarterback's bad and hurt. I guess they can just get the ball to Chubb a ton, I suppose, but. I don't know what to do with that game, basically, but you guys have probably better takes on it than I do because I'm kind of down on it. Andre, some of your favorite receivers, run them down for me.
Cooper Kupp, I love getting to a lot. Like Grant said with the New Orleans situation. New Orleans is my favorite team, obviously. So I keep track of them all the time. Their defense is pretty good, obviously. Marshawn Lattimore pretty much owns Mike Evans besides one matchup. So I like being a little bit under on their defense. I mean, a little bit under on Chris Godwin as well, just for that reason. I do like getting Calvin Ridley though a lot in this matchup against Carolina. It's one I'd like to that I think is could potentially do really well. Michael Pittman is someone else I really like getting to, another high on receiver that we have. Brandon Cooks, I'm gonna probably be at the field with them a little bit on. I kind of feel like you don't even need a run back with the Rams, but I'm gonna have just in case. But these Cincinnati receivers, all of them, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, I'm going to try to be at the field, not a little bit over on them. I think they're going to come in a little bit under own in tournaments just because everyone's going to be paying attention to these other guys as well. And also in the Buffalo Bills matchup, I like getting more to Emmanuel Sanders and getting to Cole Beasley a lot. Just getting to Diggs, who obviously is a phenomenal receiver and hasn't been great this year, but I just think that there's other options that are better. I like getting to also Robbie Anderson. I know we got him. I know he's been horrible lately, but he's someone I think you should play a lot of and play more of. And obviously we mentioned Deontay Johnson, who I'm going to be extremely well over the field on. Like just without Denzel Ward, and we know how Ben Roethlisberger just loves throwing the ball to him with the targets and also the short passes and the yards after catch that Deontay Johnson has the potential to get is just phenomenal. So this is a great spot for him. I think I know I'm gonna be well over the field on him. And Cortland Sutton is someone else I also want to mention down here that we have coming at like 2% ownership. To me, going against that Washington pass defense, who was not really all that great at all, probably the worst, if not the worst in the league. Just to me, Cortland Sutton should have a monster day, especially with Jared Judy coming back. There's going to be probably more attention paid to him. Sutton, I think, is obviously healthy. I think he'll be able to catch a couple bombs and go for like 2 touchdowns to that. So to
play some Teddy Bridgewater then, Drake.
I might have to the way I'm talking him up, but
play him. If you lose, then I will say sorry.
Out of the Saints of your team, right? You're supposed to like throw pass catchers against Tampa. Callaway, Traquan, am I playing either one of these guys? You're
supposed to play pass catchers against them. They haven't actually been that bad of a defense. It's just situational. Yeah. I don't think Tampa Bay throws up a lot of points. So you play pass catchers against them when you're stacking up Tampa Bay and assuming Brady's going to throw 4 touchdowns. It makes sense as a bring back and Winston being forced to throw, but it's not a great matchup like everyone thinks.
Like Tampa has their defense just been banged up, honestly. So I can't trust the pass catchers. Like Traquan Smith is a good guy. Marquise Callaway, I think those 2 guys are the guys. If you want to target them from New Orleans, target those 2 guys. But we know that Sean Payton does not want to pretty much have Jameis Winston throw the ball really a lot. He wants him to pretty much be the ultimate game manager and try to get the ball to Alvin Kamara as much as possible. But also we got to bring it to the fold. They got Mark Ingram back there. So he's going to take away some more carries away so that way they can hold the clock a little bit more. And he already knows the system pretty well. So I just think that you can't do it for right now. I wouldn't have any run backs personally on my end. But if you want to, like I said, Traquan Smith or Marquise Callaway, unless like Michael Thomas comes back, which he should have been back already, but that's neither here nor there.
We got some questions compiling from chat, so we want to knock those out before we step aside and make way for Erik and Ben. We're going to give you guys a broad GPP conversation, like give you guys some things that you probably haven't thought about all week, like the what if, like here's the goofy stuff that can happen that people aren't necessarily thinking about. Grant, be concise as far as tight ends. And, Dan Arnold is one of those guys, like he kind of speaks to the slate that he's not necessarily great, but he's cheap and he gets a decent amount of targets for who he is. And he makes stuff work on DK because the cap is rough. So he's going to be the cash game du jour tight end, whether you like it or not. Kyle Pitts on FanDuel, Kyle Pitts on Yahoo. Love him. He's got across the last couple of weeks. I don't see why it stops today. Goddard, you compare him with Hurts, who's just fine in the zone. Higbee's pretty cheap. Freiermuth for Pittsburgh is somebody that's going to pop him for me on Yahoo and on FanDuel. What do you have here, Grant? Again, be quick because we got to move.
The best plays are the lower owned ones, and Hawkinson, Fant, Henry, and Gronk.
Yeah, Gronk's back. That's interesting.
Yeah, he was scoring more touchdowns than anyone else before he got injured.
Yeah,
Yep.
He smashes, I'm told. Andre, what do you have for me as far as tight ends?
Pretty much, I was going to say the same thing. Gronk was going to be my sneaky tight end play of the day, just because I think he has a chance to outscore everyone else. But pretty much my top ones would be Gronk today. I like Jared Cook a lot today. Noah Fan as well. I'm going to have to play a little bit of Teddy Bridgewater, I guess.
Yeah.
That's the appropriate way of saying you're playing Teddy, by the way. I think that kind of enthusiasm, that level of enthusiasm.
And I like actually getting to Gaskin a little bit too today as well. So those are like my top three that I have.
Oh, I do want to mention, by the way, Yahoo specific, Jacoby Myers is $10, the absolute floor, the minimum, and $11 Robbie Anderson. And I told you I ran a bunch out there. Those are two of my most popular wide receivers, just because they make stuff work. They make stuff work. They're super, super cheap. Defenses, whatever. You're going to be playing Washington on DK, on cash. That's what you're going to be doing because they're super, super cheap. And Fanduel, ideally, you can get to the Rams. You probably can't get to the Rams because it's, you want to spend up on a guy for Cooper Kupp, and there's really no defense that pops for me. Grant, if you have a defensive thought, by all means, share it. No, okay, I didn't think you did. Let's knock out. Well, give me this. Give me your favorite stack. Andre, have one waiting for us while Grant gives us his favorite stack.
Bridgewater, Sutton, Fant.
Oh, you're playing two of his pass catchers?
Yes.
Are you running it back?
Probably. I mean, you can run it back any which way you want. Like McLaurin is the obvious answer, and Seals Jones, but McLaurin is. We didn't really talk about him much.
I mean, Scary Terry and Halloween. Come on.
Yeah, well, his name is McLovin, but a guy that's put up 25 plus points 3 times in the last 6 weeks is coming in at sub 3% owned. What are people doing?
It makes sense, but yeah, I hear.
No, it doesn't make sense.
Andre, your favorite stack?
I like Sam Darnold going with pairing him with DJ Moore, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins as a double stack, or Joe Burrow with Joe Mixon and one of those receivers as well. And obviously Matt Stafford with Henderson and Cooper Kupp.
All right, some questions here in chat. Oh, I love Eric's questions. DK tournament, how much Boston Scott and Michael Carter is too much? Grant, I'm playing some Michael Carter. I don't think I have any Boston Scotts. What are your thoughts?
I don't like Boston Scott. I love Michael Carter. Like, had a 7% snap rate last week. The dump offs are going to be massive because look at his quarterback.
My burner account is asking for Yahoo Cash. Najee seems too cheap. Thoughts? Yeah, I like Najee. He was popping up in some of my builds, but I do not believe I landed on him. I prefer. Who did I prefer instead? Swift and Henderson. I think my 2 favorite on FanDuel as far as cash, as far as the running backs. But if that's who you land on, it's fine. He was right, kind of on the fringe for me. Andre, Eric's asking about your GPP thoughts as far as Tannehill. We didn't talk about AJ Brown, but I think AJ Brown could potentially be the wide receiver 1 today. So yeah, sure. I'm okay with Tannehill. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not okay with him today just because I don't think he can get there just with AJ Brown alone. Honestly, I'm not confident that. I think, and I'm personally my game script, I think that they're going to do is give the ball to Derrick Henry about 30 times and try to pass the ball probably like 20, 25 times.
Grant, you're a resident Bronco expert by location. 2 questions about the Broncos. Fanduel tournament, Judy or Sutton? And for tournaments, I mean, I think that's Sutton. Or Javonte or Melvin? It's Javonte, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't play the running backs too much.
Same.
Yeah, I probably prefer Sutton because Judy's going to draw some more play from other people just because of his price, but it's site dependent.
DK cash quarterback, I can answer that. It's supposed to be Hurts. If you have the salary, if you somehow have the salary, by all means, play Allen. If you're desperate for salary and you don't want to play Hurts, I think Matt Ryan's okay. I think he's okay. But just kind of it's tough. The cap is tight, but that's pretty much where I'm at. Any love for Big Ben? You had a little bit of love, Andre, right? At least somebody did. I think it was you.
Oh no, I don't. I love his receivers. I love Deontay Johnson, not Big Ben.
All right. So, Grant, who do you like as a low-owned wide receiver on FanDuel today? You mentioned Terry McLaurin. Is there someone else you want to throw into the conversation as far as, let's say,
Johnson.
under 10%?
Johnson.
We're asking questions more about the Denver running back situation. Yeah, it's like they basically split it. Neither there's nothing really appealing about it. I don't think, whatever. It's a possible one of them breaks off. Devonta breaks off an 80-yard touchdown run, sure, of course. But I'm not banking on that happening. Couple tournament quarterbacks for you, Andre. We want to know about Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones.
I'd rather play Trevor Lawrence than Mac Jones of anyone today. So Lawrence is going to Seattle. The defense has not been what they used to be. So to me, you can stack him with Marvin Jones, who I think is a good play, or Chenault, and you're fine to go. And also with James Robinson, who's going to get work in a passing game as well as the running game.
Grant, this is the tricky part of the slate. Jay's asking about punt plays jumping out for DK, and there's none that are jumping out. There's some that you can kind of like force in just because salary cap reasons, and that's why like Van Jefferson, they're talking about Djax. He's going to get traded in theory. He wants to try to explore a trade, not getting enough run, and Van Jefferson's role might not change a ton. Like he's been out there just running those sprints anyway for the most part, and just not getting a ton of targets because he's got Woods out there, Henderson out there, and of course Cooper Kupp. But there's not much else as far
Nico
as
Collins.
Yeah, 3-point. He's somebody I saw too, and like he gets 65% of the snaps or something like that. An interesting little run back, and I made a lineup with them too, and I did not feel good about it. But there's nothing there. How much is, I meant to look at how much is Davis for Buffalo? Is he got crazy cheap? Is he the 4? 3-3. So the loss of Knox, maybe there's some thought that they might go 4 wide. So that's kind of sort of somewhat interesting. It's a little bit ambitious, but maybe galaxy brainish if you want to say. But he's kind of sort of somewhat interesting. But that's kind of where we're at, right, Andre? Like, as far as who's the cheapest wide receiver you're playing today as of right now?
The cheapest wide receiver is Van Jefferson.
Yeah, at 3.9. That's it, right? There's so little below him.
Yeah, it's not really no value today. I mean, you could go with like a guy like Tyler Johnson as well from this Tampa Bay if you want to, but like I said, I don't like the matchup really as much, so I'm not going to be on that.
Grant, James Robinson or Chubb for single entry tournaments?
James Robinson.
Ooh, I think those both are really interesting for single entry because they're going to be so low owned in single entry. Let's see. I'll take a look at this cash. So, Grant, you have a thought? 3v3. This is Josh Allen, Diggs, and Sweeney. I assume that's the tight end versus Herbert, Keenan Allen, and Henry. They're stacking for some reason in cash. You don't necessarily have to do it unless it happens organically. I can't imagine playing Sweeney in cash. I would just say that, but Allen.
Yeah. I'd go
with
the other one.
Andre, final thoughts. What's going to break the slate?
I'm going to be ambitious because I'm going to probably be well over the field on him and say Sam Darnold is what breaks the slate today.
Can you pair him with Moore or you pair him with Anderson?
I'm pairing him. I'm going to pair him with Moore.
Grant?
Teddy B, Bridgewater, Deontay Johnson, Terry McLaurin, James Robinson break the slate.
Teddy B, Bridgewater, I believe, is redundant. That was the show. Hey,
no, his middle name is Benjamin. Teddy Benjamin not. Bridgewater.
I'm going to Wikipedia that when we get off air. Don't go anywhere. You got Beer Makers fans pick. He's going to take it's kind of bridges you guys to the next show. And again, I was talking about it. Erik and Ben, you're going to give you guys the Galaxy Brain Tournament way to look at things from a different perspective. And
it's Edmund. Edmund is his
Teddy
middle name.
It rhymes, but there you go. Close enough. Swing and a miss. So we do thank you guys for watching. Hit the like button, subscribe. And again, don't go anywhere. And also, if you guys get yourself RG Premium, $10 off for that. Link in chat. We're grinding basketball as well, too. Check us out on basketball. 5-10. I believe it's 5-10. Whatever. During the weekday, check out some basketball. It's good times there for sure. We got to go. We're up against the clock, and Erik and Ben are waiting to come in. Thanks for watching. We're stepping aside. Stay tuned till 1. Taking you guys all up the lock. We're out of here. Good luck today. Holler.
Back to Fantasy Bar, 6 plays for you on Yahoo for week 8, including 4 guys for you, $25 and below to make life easy on you. A running back I think is too cheap. One of my favorite quarterback wide receiver pairings, and a beast of the week I think goes completely overlooked. Who we talking about? Belly up to the Fantasy Bar and find out. Welcome in, guys. Week 8 edition, Beers Daily Fantasy 6-pack, talking some Yahoo here on this slate. Thank you for stopping by the Fantasy Bar and checking out the video. Now, before we get into the plays for tonight, as always, make sure you click that thumbs up button, guys. I greatly appreciate it. Helps us out tremendously. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notifications bell. You can also check out 6 more plays I like on Fanduel and DraftKings, the link right there in the video. And don't forget, take advantage of this special offer on Yahoo. Click the link below for $25 free to use in your Yahoo contest. The link right there. Click it. Take advantage of that offer. Now, let's get into the plays here for Week 8 on Yahoo. Let's start at the wide receiver position with DJ Moore of the Panthers. Now, this price really jumped out to me on DJ Moore. Just $23 here was kind of a surprise here. Fallen $6 from just 2 weeks ago. You say, $6. Every dollar matters here on Yahoo. So let's take advantage and buy low on DJ Moore. I know it's been a couple of rough weeks for Sam Darnold, for this offense, but I think Moore and Darnold get it going here against Atlanta. Now, let's focus on Moore. 10 or more targets now in 5 of the last 6 games, 70 or more receiving yards in 6 of 7 games this season. So about as consistent as we could ask for. And we know the upside is there as well, especially against this Atlanta Falcons team. Bottom 10 in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. I think this one could definitely go back and forth. DJ Moore, a must play for me here in Week 8 against Atlanta. All right, let's move to the tight end position. Always a tough one when you're not going Travis Kelce, but we're going to try to save some money here as well. We're going Mike Gesicki of the Dolphins, just $18. Now, Gesicki been phenomenal since Tua returned to the lineup. 15 catches on 17 targets. These two have a phenomenal connection here. Have to keep an eye on Devontae Parker. If he is out, Gesicki becomes a must-play for me. Even if Parker's in there, I love the spot here. Why? They're big-time underdogs here in this one. We know Buffalo is going to score points. In fact, Buffalo's team total over 30 points in this one. It's going to force Miami to go to the air. 10-plus targets feels like a lock here for Gesicki. I think they're going to throw the ball a lot, and the targets last season were there against this team as well. 2 games against Buffalo, 8 targets per game in that one. So I think the run continues here. I think he stays hot, and under $20 feels like a great value here this week on Yahoo. All right, let's go to the running back position with a little cheap play. I promised you. We're going Kenneth Gainwell of the Eagles, just $17. So if you watch my Fanduel DraftKings video, you know I love the Philadelphia offense here this week. We're going to go with Gainwell here in this video. You obviously don't want to put them all in one lineup, but I think Philadelphia needs to be a big part of your builds here against the Lions, including Gainwell here on Yahoo. Now, Miles Sanders not expected to play in this one. I know Boston Scott kind of got a lot of opportunity in that game, and I don't think that's going to change either. But I think Gainwell going to have the upper hand in this committee here. So big-time opportunity here. And we've already seen some big games out of him. And that's as the backup, the co-back with Miles Sanders. 3 games of double-digit Yahoo points so far this season. And this is a great matchup for running backs. The Lions, second most fantasy points allowed, and give up a lot of receiving touchdowns. 6 already this season. That is the bread and butter of Kenneth Gainwell's game, and I think we see it on display here this week against the Detroit Lions. All right, let's go to the wide receiver position. Another fantastic buy low. We're going with T. Higgins, just $16. Now, I know Jamar Chase lighting the world on fire. He's the guy you definitely want to continue to play here. But I think there's enough targets, enough production in this matchup here with the Jets for T. Higgins to be productive as well. In fact, I think T. Higgins outproduces Jamar Chase this week. So a little hot take maybe, but 15 targets in that game last week against Baltimore. Definitely an encouraging sign. We have not seen the big blow-up game yet out of T. Higgins. I think it's coming here in this one. The Jets, one of the worst teams in the league against the pass this season. Cincinnati projected to score almost 4 touchdowns in this game, and I think T. Higgins gets at least one of those. In fact, we're going to go big, 2 touchdowns here for T. Higgins, just $16 on Yahoo. Tremendous value. Get him in those lineups. All right, we like T. Higgins. That means we must like his quarterback. That's where we're going next. Joe Burrow, $30. So 4 straight productive games here for Joe Burrow. After kind of a slow start, they weren't really allowing him to throw the ball, kind of being cautious with Joe Burrow. Well, they've kind of unlocked him here, and it's really shown up in the box scores. 20 or more Yahoo points now in 4 straight. In fact, averaging over 23 per game over that same stretch. Multiple touchdowns in every single game this season. So you talk about a floor, you talk about consistency. He is certainly getting us there. And 6 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks shows the upside in tournaments that we are looking for as well. Now, remember back to last week, the Jets, 54 points allowed to New England. I think the Cincinnati team is better than New England. So the upside is massive here. I like the over on that Cincinnati team total here. I think this offense goes nuts, and led by Joe Burrow and T. Higgins this week against the New York Jets. All right, it's time to take a look at my favorite play for week 8 on Yahoo. But before we do that, we want to continue our Beast of the Week contest. Very easy to play. This is a thank you to you guys for checking out the video, for hanging out in the fantasy bar, and for hitting that thumbs up button. All you got to do is get in the comment section right below the video and guess fantasy points on Yahoo for my favorite play of the week. The closest guess is going to win themselves a free Rotogrinders t-shirt. We'll send it right to your doorstep. Going to be your favorite t-shirt. I promise you that. Now, without further ado, let's take a look at my favorite play for week 8. No mask, Beast of the Week. All right, Beast time. We owe you one more running back. I promise you a guy I think goes a little bit overlooked this week, and that's going to be James Robinson of Jacksonville, this week's Beast of the Week. Now, you're looking at pricing range of running backs on Yahoo. There's a lot of bigger names, guys that are a little bit cheaper that are in good spots. I think that's going to force the ownership down here on James Robinson. I think people are going to have sticker shock here at a $30 price point, but he's certainly one that I want to take advantage of in this matchup. Let's take a look at the recent form. It's certainly there. Last 4 games, 5 touchdowns over that stretch, averaging over 20 Yahoo points per game. Again, that price kind of makes him that pay up to be contrarian that I always talk about, where no one wants to pay that price for him. It's going to keep that ownership down. So he certainly checks that box as well. And let's look at the matchup. Checks that one as well. Seattle, second most fantasy points allowed per week to the running back position and the most receiving yards. And we've seen his receiving role grow week by week. This guy is becoming the guy that we saw last season. They're coming off a bye week.
Good morning, grinders. Welcome to week 8. Week 8 this season is absolutely flying by, and we have officially reached the point that I don't even know what week it is. I barely know what day it is. But GPP Final Takes show, as usual, leading you up to lock, and then the crunch time guys will take it over for us afterwards. As always, I am your co-host, Erik Beimfohr. You can find me on Twitter at Erik Beimfohr, and I'm also, as always, joined by my co-host, Ben Gretch at Yards per Gretch on Twitter, and the author of the Stealing Signals newsletter, where you can find out basically everything you need to know about what we've learned every single week, every single game, every single fantasy relevant player. Ben will tell you whether it's signals, noise, maybe somewhere in between, or maybe sometimes you'll just throw your hands up and say, who knows, right? $8 a month. I highly recommend that. Usually I go into some long diatribe before we start, but it's Halloween, Ben. You're the one with kids. You probably got all these big plans today, figuring out how to fit football into trick-or-treating and all of that. So how is your Sunday going on this Halloween?
It's going good. I'm still going to be watching all the games. I'm out on the West Coast, so it gets done early enough that basically only Sunday night football becomes a problem for me. So it's the kids are excited. I got the Happy Halloween this morning. They got their outfits and everything. They're into Sonic the Hedgehog right now, so they're I'm gonna be Dr. Eggman,
nice.
the bad guy.
Nice. It is funny how now the stuff that was cool when we were young, it's like it's come full circle. I never would have thought by the time I'm in my early 30s that the kids would be into Sonic. Like, I'd be talking to someone and their kids are into Sonic. That is
Alvin Ridley's inactive.
Okay, well, we
were talking about Sonic, but now Calvin Ridley's inactive.
We literally, I thought it would be like kind of smooth. We could lead into it with some Halloween talk, some Sonic the Hedgehog talk, because this week, as we were talking about pre-show with producer Devin, thank you, Devin, for handling all the inactives and everything in the chat. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to check out the chat, because Devin is keeping us up to speed on everything. So obviously, like I said, we were talking before the show, we don't expect any super major, bombshells or anything like that. It seems fairly straightforward from an injury perspective. Obviously that has been thrown out the window. Very surprising. Calvin Ridley inactive. So we'll definitely have to hit on that, obviously. But we can double back there. I don't want to go too crazy right off the bat, overreacting, because I don't think it's quite, it's obviously very, very impactful, but I think it's going to be a pretty fascinating discussion. Maybe when we get to that game or get to wide receiver. I do want to hit a couple of.
Let's hit on it a little bit, right? It's a concentrated offense. I think it makes. Look, Pitts has been really good the last couple of weeks. It makes Pitts a lot more appealing, but
yeah,
I also think it makes Cordell Patterson more appealing. He's already going to catch some ownership, but Ridley looked like a pretty good play this week, and it definitely opens things up for mostly for me. It's those two players, and since we sort of know it's those two players, it probably brings Russell Gage into play as a cheap receiver as well. And I hate Russell Gage, but it's a big it's a concentrated enough offense that I think it's kind of a big moment for the whole slate. I think it does change things.
I think the first thing that always comes to my mind when these situations, so you get the best, second best, whatever you want to call Calvin Ridley in that offense, he's extremely important to the efficiency of that offense, point blank period. Whether Pitts is better than him, whether Cordell Patterson's better than him, they need Calvin Ridley, right? Russell Gage and Olamide Zaccheaus and these guys can't do what he can do on the outside in terms of even just like threatening and defense, not just production. So when we get these situations, the first thing I always kind of try to do is think about, this isn't the NBA. It's like, we're doing a DFS show, and you'll see a lot of times in these situations, like, oh crap, late scratch, right? LeBron is out. It's like, oh, got to jam in Russell Westbrook, got to jam in Anthony Davis, got to do whatever, because this, they're just going to score so many points. And so now you just remove, right? Pricing hasn't adjusted, blah, blah, blah. Football is not that. Football is, there is absolutely going to be opportunity presented now to Kyle Pitts, to Russell Gage, to Cordell Patterson, maybe to Mike Davis. Maybe they play CPAT more at wide receiver. I'm not sure. But the offense, this also isn't the world's best matchup. Stephon Gilmore is there in Carolina. I think they're a pretty darn good defense. Not like, this isn't, the 85 Bears, but like it's a pretty good defense. And now you just removed the best wide receiver on the Falcons. So I start to think like, okay, yes, some opportunity has opened up for some guys, but like the efficiency of this offense might just totally crater, and the ownership is only going to rise on all these Falcons. It might rise on the game stack now too, even though the game is less appealing. What do you think about that? Because that's always the first thing that
I immediately agree with that. I completely agree with that. I think, and especially as it relates to Pitts, I think one of the big things, like Pitts has had the volume over several weeks. It's tough at tight end. One of the big things we've seen the last two games where he's really popped has been the efficiency coming around, which hadn't really been there. There's going to be some sequencing, some pattern matching, like people looking at it and going, well, Pitts is broken out now. He's a star. He certainly has the potential for a low efficiency game. And to your point, with Ridley out, I think it obviously draws more attention defensively onto Pitts. And so that can be a pretty massive problem for him. I think Patterson is the one that immediately stands out to me, because it's like, okay, they do everything with him. They've used him sort of to fill in gaps whenever he played a much larger role coming out of the bye last week. When Ridley was out for the London game prior to the bye, I think CPAT was pretty involved in that game. Can't remember the exact line. Pitts had the touchdown early.
Yep.
At any rate, Patterson, I think you're right. I think he plays more at wide receiver to compensate for this. We saw him actually lead Davis in carries by quite a bit last week. Davis still got a lot of snaps. He's not going to be completely out of the offense. He's a really hard play, though, considering he only got 4 touches last week coming out of the bye. They very much were trying to deprioritize him. It seemed like, even though he played a lot of snaps, it's like, we're not going to give him the ball. He probably certainly gets more this week, but I don't necessarily want to play him for efficiency reasons. Like I said, I think CPAT's kind of the play for me.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. And he might be the guy, like he's certainly going to get an ownership boost, right? But in the 6K-ish range as a running back, there's actually a good amount, I think, of running backs available to us on this slate. And he still has that stigma, whatever you want to call it, about like, this isn't sustainable, blah, blah, blah. He has all those things that people are like, I can't click 6,200 or whatever, Cordell Patterson. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And particularly on DraftKings, the fact that he like is still going to have this running back role, but we think he's going to now play some more wide receiver. Like, that's a gold mine. Like, almost like set aside the matchup. That's what you want. Like, that's why like Christian McCaffrey was 10K for so many years, because like, you're getting a wide receiver 2 and a guy getting goal line carries, right? And all that. So I'm not saying he's Christian McCaffrey, but I'm saying the role is super, super fascinating, particularly on DraftKings. So that's kind of where my brain went to. I think I'm not clicking Russell Gage. Shout out to you guys. If you are clicking Russell Gage, I get it. He's probably going to project. We'll see what the projections do when they update here. We'll see what happens there.
I mean, a note on him. He had a 47-yard TD last week. He typically never has long touchdowns, and he played that ball literally off his face mask. He's not a very good receiver. It was open, and it ricocheted off his face mask right into his hands. It was one of the more fluky long touchdowns I've seen in a while. But he's not particularly great. But I think if you're playing him, you're looking more for a lot of underneath targets and maybe, especially on DraftKings, maybe 8 catches, 80 yards, something like that.
Yep. So I do think, as much as it pains me, that Kyle Pitts might get a little bit more. He's expensive, and the typical build this week is not with an expensive tight end. So I don't think his ownership's like going to get out of control, but he's certainly going to get a boost because of a nice projection boost from volume. But I'm personally probably still not going to go there. And we'll get into some of the roster construction stuff as to why in a little bit. But I was talking about Cordell Patterson and like the running back thing, and why like maybe his ownership doesn't get away. That we have another bombshell, which we've kind of, we haven't gotten to yet, but Jamal Williams is out also for the Lions. So we already had DeAndre Swift as one of the top projecting running backs on the slate. Obviously his role is just a gold mine, catching passes on a team that's losing by multiple scores every single week, getting goal line carries. Now Jamal Williams, that guy who has kind of been the thorn in his side, is out. I'm still kind of, my brain is spinning on what to do here, because part of me thinks like, holy cow, now this is a smash for Swift. And part of me thinks like, man, now he's just going to become,
he's going to become chalky, I think, pretty quick.
The mega chalk. And I think, what do you think about just
probably with good reason. I love to talk about those high value touches. It's the receptions and the work like in near the goal line. Swift has concentrated that stuff. I mean, he's had like the massive, like massively high share of those in an offense that generates a lot of them. Goff's checking down. He's not a scrambler. You're going to get a lot of running back targets. Swift's running a ton of routes the last few weeks. Especially his routes have really ticked up. His snap share's been up around 70 to 75%. I think he's got up to about 74%, but he's stayed consistent up over 70%, which he wasn't the first few weeks. So Jamal Williams is basically taking what are like the low value touches, a lot of the early down rushing attempts, right? So him being out doesn't have like an immediate massive impact on Swift, other than just saying that like now he does have 85%, 90% touch share potential. And he's always basically had a huge ceiling because of these high value touches, because he's an efficient back, an explosive back. You want guys that can make big plays. I mean, it makes me want to play him, even though he's going to be, probably pretty highly owned. The other back that I'll be interested to see if he plays at all is Jermar Jefferson, their late round rookie. You don't play him, I don't think, but if he there's some potential that he could just sort of take the Jamal Williams early down rushes, and Swift's role doesn't change too much. But yeah, I mean, I think Swift, he's always a ceiling back and somebody that you could certainly play. And now there's more potential for him to play every snap essentially. So that becomes appealing to me, certainly.
Yeah, I will say, the thing that definitely becomes fairly clear is we'll get to questions and everything later, and people like to ask about cash and all of that. I think Swift was probably a cash play before alongside Darrell Henderson, and now it is pretty much just like you just play those two guys in cash games. But that becomes like this running back position I was kind of talking about before actually has like a lot of plays. I think none that you're like Henderson and Swift are like, I click those and I'm like you feel good, it gives you the warm and fuzzies when you click Swift and Henderson today. But like there's a lot of other guys I think that are actually really viable, and that hasn't always been the case this year. It's kind of been a roller coaster at the running back position. So the other thing that, like, you know, we're talking about instant reactions to the Ridley thing. The instant reaction to this is like, how many teams are going to have Swift, Henderson at running back, and what does that do to the ownership of all these other guys? I mean, all these other guys, right? We have, you know, the Eagles just lost Miles Sanders. I get that it's murky. Trust me, you don't have to explain to me that it's murky there. But a team just lost their starting running back. And it's like, now those, like Gainwell, I guess if you think Boston Scott's the guy, but Gainwell is now, his ownership's going to be low.
And Jordan Howard's the other one that's going to be active, it sounds like. I mean, I don't know. We'll have to check that, because it seems like a spooky Halloween inactive, right? I mean, God, that was terrible. But Jordan Howard, there's some reports that he might get a lot of the carries. And so whether it's Scott or Howard, it does seem that Gainwell is probably only going to stick in sort of his pass down role. But I mean, I like Gainwell a lot as well. I mean, I totally hear what you're saying. It's murky, but we could certainly play him. But you're right. There's a lot of backs. I mean, Joe Mixon's right in that range. There's some potential. Like, I don't think Mixon's that much different of a play than Henderson. If you think that, Cincy and the Rams both sort of blow out, it's like, okay, well, which game gets into too big of a script where the starter gets pulled? I mean, Henderson's been playing a ton of snaps, but I think there's certainly potential in this game that he doesn't, that they go to Sony Michel because it's such a blowout. And then the same would be true for Mixon, except if the Jets are a little bit more feisty. I mean, P. Ryan played a lot last week. I don't love the Mixon play, but I mean, yeah, he's a guy that's going to go pretty overlooked. Nick Chubb is another one that I think is probably, I mean, he's starting to get a little bit steamed up since last night. I kind of landed on him early in the evening last night. I was like, ooh, Nick Chubb's going to be a great play. And then I started seeing, you know, a lot of Nick Chubb conversation until this morning. And so I don't know where he's going to come in, but I think he's a really nice play. 2019, when Kareem Hunt was suspended for the first 8 games, Chubb's receiving role was substantially better. And they got the long week after he missed on Thursday night last week. He got in a full practice on Friday. He doesn't have an injury designation. People are concerned about guys coming off injury, and rightfully so. But it sounds like, to me, Chubb seems like he's perfectly fine. I mean, I know Dearness Johnson was great, but the last time we saw Chubb with no Hunt, they just went hardcore into Chubb. I think people think this is a split because they want to manage workloads. I think they do a split because they think they have 2 really, really talented running backs in Chubb and Hunt. But every time one has been out, the other has been pretty much heavily utilized. So there's definitely some opportunity for Chubb to have a bigger role than he's had basically all year. So he's a guy I like as well.
Well, that makes me feel good because, again, we were talking before the show, and I was like, and of course, the week when I say my team's been done, you know, I'm only playing one tournament team on DraftKings. I'm like, my team's been done. Like, I feel really good about this, you were saying like, yeah, I don't know how I feel about the slate. I'm like, I feel pretty good about this slate. Chubb was in my team. Of course, this is now I'm thinking through this stuff with the Swift and Ridley and everything, but I couldn't possibly agree more. And it kind of makes me more excited for Chubb in a way, just because, like, I mean, now he's literally not going to be owned. And like you said, think about if we didn't have this other context. I always try to do this. Like, you can't remove all the context about a slate and the nuance about a slate. But if you did, and you said, okay, Jamal Williams was playing, and you know, Hunt was out, and Dearness didn't do this monster smash, you know, in their last game. Chubb at 6,800 without Hunt, you know, like the matchup doesn't matter. Like, that price is egregious. He was more than that early this year with Hunt in.
So now we did talk before the show, and you said you're feeling good about the slate, and I was like, man, I'm not sure. One of the things I'm not sure about, like, so I have 3 teams right now. I'm going to wind up with 4. I'm going to tweak after the show, but I have Chubb in all 3 of them, and I'm like, I got to get off of him somehow. But so now that I'm sitting here talking to you, and you're like, I have Chubb in the team that I'm excited about. Yeah, maybe I won't be get off Chubb. I think he's a strong play. Completely agree.
And I think, you know, that's what it always sounds funny. People want to know, like, oh, you know, do you like this play or that play? That's why I kind of prefaced it like with the cash takes at running back, because it's like, look, if you're playing cash, here's who the best 2 plays are. We've outlined that now, right? And if you're making a tournament team that's properly leveraged, right, that isn't just like jamming all this chalk elsewhere, and you want to play DeAndre Swift and you want to play Darrell Henderson, you can do that, but you have to have the understanding of what that team needs to look like now, because the ownership on those 2 is just going to be absolutely insane. And so if you like, I don't know, Chris Godwin, or, you want to play AJ Brown, Chris Godwin, which I do want to play those guys. Like, you want to play some of these other guys who are going to be owned. You need to look to the Nick Chubbs of the world, the Cordero Pattersons of the world. Somebody mentioned in chat, James Robinson is interesting too. James Robinson is another workhorse in the similar role, in the similar price tier in a good match. I know that game is gross, but in a good enough matchup, right? There's guys. And, we have cheaper guys. I kind of like Myles Gaskin, right? Malcolm Brown is out. I think the Bills are going to name their score today. Myles Gaskin makes for a super interesting run back. I know they called up our Laird and savior, Patrick Laird, and, whatever. But I think Gaskin is interesting. I think that there's just like a ton of options. And so the running back position is like, it's this odd thing where I'm like, okay, we just got news and now we have like 2 total absolute slam dunk plays. And I'm like, but that's kind of where I want to get different, because I think the leverage opportunity is like really, really big there. Whereas at wide receiver, it's like, yes, I know Godwin and AJ Brown are going to be owned, but like, Godwin's not going to be 50%. Like Swift, depending on your contest, like Swift and Henderson are going to be like triple, quadruple, 5 times as owned as these other running backs. And so,
and we're not even talking about like the high end guys. I mean, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, both in a high total game, and they have easy bring back. Like you can do little mini correlations with the receivers on the other side. You mentioned AJ Brown. You can play Taylor, AJ Brown really easy. You can play Henry, Pittman really easy. I mean, they're expensive, but like it's a clean mini correlation sort of in your lineup. Alvin Kamara, Najee Harris. I mean, like I think you can play and get up to those guys too, but no one is going to play them, and they might wind up being the answer here. So no, I completely agree with your broader point. There's a lot of running back options in tournaments, especially.
And this was, we had like a couple of weeks ago, the Alexander Madison thing, right? Dalvin Cook goes out and you have Madison and they were in a smash spot. And like, this is not that. This even Darrell Henderson is not that to me. I know he projects great. I mean, how can you not love Darrell Henderson against the Texans? But there are ways in which, so like take against the Giants 2 weeks ago or whatever. Again, I know he's probably going to be more efficient running the ball with the Texans than against the Giants. He scored 2 touchdowns. He scored like 25 PPR points. Darrell Henderson did. That's great. I would love to have 25 points in my lineup. That is not insurmountable, right? He's not putting up the Derrick Henry 45 point game with, 180 yards and 3 touchdowns or whatever. So like, I think people sometimes fall into this trap with the running backs. Like, oh man, that guy, I feel good. Like the projection is great on that guy, but it's like, is the projection that much worse for Nick Chubb? Is the projection that much worse for, Austin Eckler, right? Like, or go crazy and flip the build and play Derrick Henry. Like you said, play JT. That game, we'll get into it. I'm sure that game is really a high priority for me. So I just think that's the thing that's kind of become fairly clear to me as we've talked this through in these first 20 minutes or so, is like, okay, we just got these slam dunk running backs, but now simultaneously I'm like, man, the leverage opportunities at running back now just like shot through the roof with a lot of other really interesting plays. So let's deviate a little bit. We talked about the running backs. I'm sure we'll get into, people have some questions and all of that. Cam is asking, is it 2 tight end week on DraftKings? It is not, Cam. Please don't ask about two tight ends. But that leads me into one more like macro point that is only more clear with like the Swift and Ridley stuff. And it is, I think if you're playing, because somebody also asked about, is there a 3K guy you can even play like on DraftKings? And like kind of, but I think that's a huge mistake in tournaments right now, because we don't have like Cooper Kupp is great. Derrick Henry's great. Those guys are great. But there's so much. How many running backs did we just go through that are like 6K that can like score 30 fantasy points? Wide receiver is even more loaded from like 5 to 7K. So if you're punting, like you're giving up not only probably projection, but upside, playing some 3K guy, Russell Gage or whatever, to get Henry and to get whatever, when you can play AJ Brown, you can play Chris Godwin, you can play Keenan Allen, you can play, I'm going to get into some of my favorite guys at the Steelers wide receivers. It's another thing, like Chubb is going to fall under the radar, even though Hunt is out. And on a normal slate, we'd be like, what the hell? Hunt is out and no one's going to play 6,800 Chubb. On the flip side of that game, which also makes for great correlations, Juju is out. Juju is out for the year. Ebron is also out. You have Deontay Johnson, you have Chase Claypool, you have Pat Wilhelmuth. That like, where else is the ball going? there's only a couple of dudes and the matchup is totally fine for the Steelers guys. So there's all these upside plays in like, let's just call it this 6K range. And so that's another big thing for me outside of the running back leverage is you need to make sure your guys have upside, I think, on this slate at every position.
And look, I think, I mean, part of the reason I even mentioned Gage is I completely agree with that point in the sense that like I'm seeing a lot of ownership coming in on like Van Jefferson. I mean, I think he's a fine play. The Rams have a huge team total and all this stuff, but I would not play him at a high ownership in tournaments. He has not actually consistently drawn targets at a really high level or been particularly efficient other than a couple of touchdowns, especially the one big one back in week 1. He's a solid piece of a good offense, certainly. And but like, basically I'm like, you need to look for alternatives. Don't play the chalk cheap receiver. Yeah. But I'm with you that probably the best way to do that is to just get off the cheap range entirely, especially because there's a lot of affordable guys that aren't that much more expensive. Like Jerry Jeudy shouldn't be $4,900 on DraftKings. Coming back, another guy coming back from injury. I like him. I like Chubb coming back from injury because people are just not on them. T Higgins, 5,200, getting massive volume. He's gonna carry a good amount of ownership, but he's a dude that I still think is gonna pop at some point. He's been pretty inefficient the last couple of weeks. I don't think that's necessarily going to continue. So you were talking about the receivers in sort of the 6K range. I think down right around 5,000. There's a couple that should be all basically in that range, and you get really nice value. So, try to avoid going all the way down to 4, as you were saying. I think that's absolutely right.
Yeah. I mean,
Jacoby Myers is another one in that range that I like.
Yep. Good. Very, very good point. Another 6K guy, just to like reiterate this point, like Keenan Allen is 6,500, Jacoby Myers, right? I don't know that people want to continue to do the Brandon Cooks thing, but like, if you really want to bring back Brandon Cooks is there in the mid 5s. There's all these guys with insane volume and insane upside, insane talent, right? This combination of all of these things from even if you want to do the Robbie Anderson thing, right? We won't belabor the Robbie Anderson point, but same thing. Robbie Anderson, Jerry Jeudy, T Higgins, Jacoby Myers, Brandon Cook. Like, listen to all those guys. Why do you need to play Van Jefferson? Like, he could catch a long touchdown and be useless to you because there's all these 5 and 6K guys that like are going to get like double-digit targets, could go 6 for 120 and 2. Like T Higgins could do that easily. Van Jefferson he's not gonna do that. Like, I mean, with that, I guess that's a top 0.1% outcome or whatever. Yeah. So we kind of hit on some of these macro points. The people always like to talk about stacks. Okay. So let's move into the stacks. I am going to hit one little side note. We've had so much chaos. I'm missing some of my housekeeping. So Devin, don't yell at me. I am going to say this show is free. Everything we're doing, a lot of our content is still free shows and stuff. But RG Premium, like I can't even like describe how insanely valuable it is for like a super cheap cost. If you want to play other sports besides NFL and maybe you don't, but like the projections team for NBA is incredible. I mean, you're probably watching on your screen the projections update in Lineup HQ for NFL, like that. And that is insanely valuable for NBA, obviously with even more late news than we're getting. May not seem like more late news since we just got a bunch of bombshells in NFL, but the late news factor in the projections team absolutely kills it for NBA. And I have to shout out the college football team again. We just absolutely destroyed yesterday in some of the live final or the final college football world championship. It was like Dan Bach, myself, PSU, like it was just like Rotogrinders people in like the whole top 5, top 10 of these tournaments. The college football team, same thing, is just absolutely killing it. So you can get all that with RG Premium. And I will stand for that team forever. So stacks. I'm thrown off now with all of this, with all of this news. Does this Swift thing, two-part question, does this Swift thing make you more or less interested in like playing the Philadelphia side of things because you have like the super clear and obvious bring back, or like less interested because the ownership kind of condenses that, the Jalen Hurts is definitely a big point on this slate. And Devonta Smith is another like kind of mid 5Ks wide receiver that has upside. I think that's the first stack. Let's talk about that one.
Yeah. I mean, Hurts is interesting. I've been sort of avoiding that one because it's challenging. Like we haven't really, I definitely think Devonta Smith has more of a ceiling than we've seen, but we haven't really seen a lot of ceiling in this passing game, in part because Hurts is gobbling up so much of the rushing, so much of the touchdown production via rushing. So I don't know. I've been kind of out on that. But with a guy like Swift, who I do want to play, even though he's going to be really high owned, I mean, I think the way you do it is you find ways to correlate it intelligently. So my answer would be like, especially if you're interested in Swift, would be that it would make me more interested in the Philly side of things, because I mean, that's obviously there's going to be people playing the Philly side with Swift, but there's also going to be a lot of lineups that sort of just jam Swift and aren't thinking about correlation enough. And so it would make me more interested in the Philly side, because if you are building through that side, if you can get sort of a unique combination of the game, it might be something that differentiates you a little bit.
I think so. And I do think Devonta Smith, Goddard will be kind of the guy just because of the tight end position. I do think the preference for most people will be to spend down. I'm not sold that Goddard has the ability to get really steamed like we see from a tight end sometimes, like Ricky Seals-Jones did. He's just not cheap enough. And your structure of your lineup gets tricky with like a close to a 5K tight end. It's not that he won't be played. He'll definitely be played. But like Devonta Smith, I just don't see a way in which he really, again, not going to be unowned because people that play Hurts are going to pair him with someone. But I just listen to all those wide receivers we named, like Devonta Smith can't possibly.
No, he's going to go under the radar for sure.
Yeah. And so, like you said, I think that he's my preference in terms of that stack. And I do think, it's pretty clear and obvious. Hurts, Devonta Smith, DeAndre Swift has a pretty insane ceiling, I think, in this game. So I do really like that one. I'm a little worried about general ownership, because it's not even just like, okay, Smith isn't crazy owned, but like every Hurts Smith team like uses the same Swift bring back, and now you've used the same salary, and it's like you can only get different so many ways.
Yeah.
And like, especially like you're playing the Millie Maker, dude, there's like thousands and thousands of
that's gonna be super, super popular, actually, now that we're talking about it more. Like Swift is, I agree with you. Goddard's gonna be probably, just because he fills tight end, probably more interesting, but Smith is like the only receiver. It's not an option in a situation where other people play other receivers. And so the point I would make is, if you did want to go to a different receiver, I think Quez Watkins, we just said don't play these small low end receivers, but Quez Watkins actually has explosive upside. Like, he's a really good downfield player. He's also taken some bubble screens to the house in his short career. He did, I think, one in the preseason this year, one late last year. But he's a dude that has been gaining snaps. He's actually now like up playing. He was more at like the 50 to 60% route range. He's up playing like basically as much as Reagor, running as many routes as Reagor, and has been more efficient and productive than Reagor. I have him ahead of Reagor essentially going forward as the wide receiver 2. I don't think anyone's really caught on to that. So if you want to be sneaky, that's a way to be sneaky, probably.
And if you do want to, like, I sat here and talked about, like you just mentioned, like, maybe avoiding that range or whatever, but there are also reasons to, I think there's going to be a lot of like single stacks, maybe with a bring, like we just talked about, Hurts, Smith, or Hurts, Goddard with Swift bring back. Like, I think that's going to be the very popular thing. And I think for good reason. I think that's probably the optimal build today, given what we have like in that 6K-ish, 5 to 7K range, just across the board. But, if you do want to Hurts, you could double stack Hurts, Smith. Hurts is maybe not the best example, but you get the point. Hurts with 2 of his pass catchers. Quez is a super cheap option. That gets you to just smash, everything else across the board, all these studs across the board. Or maybe you want to go get Kyle Pitts now, right? Calvin Ridley's out. How do you get Kyle Pitts? Well, you do have to save somewhere to get Kyle Pitts. So you use Quez, right, instead. So, kind of contradicting myself, but I think that there are reasons, as long as you're doing it smartly, and the correlation aspect. And Quez does have the upside. I also think, like, the issue with Van Jefferson as a punt is not necessarily just Van Jefferson. It is like the ownership and the situation around Van Jefferson and what Van Jefferson teams are going to look like. If you want to fade Henderson and stack up Stafford with Van and Kupp and bring it back with Cooks or something like that, like, by all means,
sure,
like that, that's totally fine. But it's just like, people are going to be like, oh, I need a cheap wide receiver. Just give me the best one. Right. And that's Van Jefferson. So what
are the Eagles? So is Eagles the stack that you're kind of into this week?
No, we're going to get into the next one. Cause I'm stubborn, as we've probably learned.
You're going to play more stubborn. Fields? Don't tell me you're going to play.
No, I'm not. I was just going to say, I'm not as stubborn as you with Fields. So I've played Fields
he's
twice.
Dead to me. He's dead.
I've played Fields twice this year. I think you've played him every week. So you win the Fields stubbornness card. But so last week, my stance, if anybody watched remembers, was I was all in on the Titans passing game, which that part worked. Tannehill and AJ Brown went nuts. I was a little higher on Julio, which sucked, but luckily when you're all in on one passing, of course I have AJ Brown too, so that went well. And we're messaging on the side like, okay, the Chiefs do need to start scoring eventually, but like this is perfect, right? Tyreek Hill, Travis, these guys are going to go nuts down by 21 points in the first half. Unfortunately, the Chiefs never went nuts and only scored 3 points against the Titans. And I'm not buying any of that. And now we have no Julio Jones. And AJ Brown, to me, is the best wide receiver play on the slate. I know that there are other guys. Like I really like Chris Godwin. I like obviously Kupp, Diggs, whatever. There's a lot of good ones. AJ Brown is my favorite wide receiver play on this slate. Matchup is golden. Everything is perfect for AJ Brown. And then the Titans defense is still horrible to me. Absolutely horrible. I do really like JT, but I think Wentz is going to be owned. But I think what's going a little under the radar is actually kind of how good Wentz has been for the last few weeks. They've either had the awful weather, right, from last week, and he still played pretty well actually in that awful weather from a fantasy perspective. They had the Texans where the Texans scored 3 points. They never got pushed. Like he's had multiple games, but he's throwing for like 10 yards per attempt in all these games. He's just throwing it like 20 times. Mm-hmm. I think the Titans are going to score a ton of points today, led by AJ Brown. And I think that the Colts O-line is getting healthy. The Colts weapons are getting healthy. I think that this game is the most exciting stack. And I actually really, really like Carson Wentz. And he has some, not amazingly obvious. Pittman is kind of obvious, but like not amazingly obvious stacking partners that make him like still, like Hurts. It's like
you're playing Mo Alley-Cox, aren't you?
I'm not playing him right now, but I've been tinkering around with things, but I do like Mo Alley-Cox as a 1% owned cheap tight end that can catch 2 touchdowns. So that game is my favorite stack, Colts Titans.
I like that. I had not given Wentz a ton of thought. I do think, you can play Zach Pascal. I do think it is a little tough. I don't think Mo Alley-Cox is really practical. The 1 week that Jack Doyle's routes fell all the way down like sub 20%, Mo Alley-Cox routes didn't even rise. Kylan Granson, their rookie, ended up actually running more routes than Mo Alley-Cox. So it's like they just replaced Doyle with Granson, and they don't see Mo Alley-Cox, or like he has a very specific role that isn't going to gain.
Yeah.
And so he's like a 50% route share guy. And so what you're hoping for is what we've seen from Mo Alley-Cox. It's certainly possible, but it's like a 345, 2 touchdown line is what you're hoping for. That's the ceiling. I don't really like to play that. I don't think he would be I've seen his name a couple times this week. I don't think he would really be in the discussion if he wasn't like part of the optimal in a showdown slate just a week ago, basically. It's like, this is the main reason that we're talking about him. But I think Pittman and I think Wentz, I think all that makes a lot of sense. I like that. I had not been considering that a lot. I know. The cheap quarterback stacks are really interesting. We might want to just hit on a couple because I know I've seen Sam Darnold talked about a lot. I think Teddy's pretty interesting with Judy and Albert O back. Albert O can provide some red zone opportunity. Washington's give up the most points to opposing quarterbacks in the NFL so far. Teddy has multiple touchdowns in 3 straight games. And so I do think this is probably a game where he gets multiple touchdowns again. Mm-hmm. And he has the best receiver group he's had since Judy went down right in week 1. And then the other one I think is like grossly interesting is Trevor Lawrence, because you get like so much salary relief if you're willing to go with Jamal Agnew or Dan Arnold. Dan Arnold's going to be really popular, but I honestly I think Jamal Agnew could be, we're still doing this with Cordero Patterson, a return specialist who got into a role. But I think in the modern NFL, you get these spread offenses. I think this is something that's kind of getting missed. Part of the reason we're seeing these return specialists actually be used in offenses is the after the catch ability, the ability to make plays with the ball in his hand. I don't think Jamal Agnew is good or anything, but the fact is he's earned solid targets the last 2 games out of the slot, and he has after the catch ability. He's been a return guy his entire career. And so you gave me those 2 things at a cheap price and no one wants to play the guy. And I'm like, okay, he's sort of being overlooked. He's, it could be just a horrible decision. But if I'm willing to bet that Lawrence has maybe a peak game here, and I think he can against Seattle's pretty awful defense, and it is an awful defense, And against Seattle's going to try to like slow the game down, but assuming that their offense, gives the Jaguars enough opportunity, I think there's some situations where Lawrence could have 2-3 touchdowns, and you can mix in a guy like Agnew or Arnold, maybe with Marvin Jones or whatever. You can do a double stack there that gives you the salary that you kind of need this week. So anyway, those are a couple of the cheap ones that I think
I'm really happy you brought that up, because that's another theme. So we've hit on kind of the running back thing, right? We've hit on like the upside, like of just this mid-tier across, and that's on both. That's also on FanDuel. I know like you have like Derrick Henry, super expensive, but like kind of outside of him, you have this like, again, 6 to 8K or whatever, 5 to 8K, whatever, where it's just a loaded tier. The other big theme for me this week is, look, I love Josh Allen. Who doesn't love Jalen Hurts? There's Herbert, pick a 7K or whatever on DraftKings quarterback. I like all of them. But like when you start to put together teams and you want to live in this like 5 to 6K range everywhere else outside of tight end, of course, you do have like how much different is Trevor Lawrence or Sam Darnold from an upside perspective? I know that they're different. They're not going to match Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts' upside, but like what percentage of the time can those guys go get you 25? We've seen Darnold do it. Lawrence has shown flashes. Teddy's people. I don't think people quite realize how good Teddy's been. He also is pushing the ball down the field like a ton, which is something that people don't realize. And like you said, he's getting all his weapons back. I'm sure you're probably still going to play a Fields team, and he's down there.
I don't have one, and I don't think I can do it again. I honestly don't think I can do it.
He's gonna do it this week. Like,
I know that's the thing. Lock. I gotta put it in like a friggin' $3 tournament or something, so it just exists.
So I do think like that whole tier. Some people like Matt Ryan. Even if you get up to like Tannehill's a little bit more expensive, but like almost from like Tannehill on down, there's like all of these guys, and they're like legitimately good fantasy options. Most of them run. Lawrence runs. Darnold was leading the NFL in rushing touchdowns through 4 weeks. Like I know he's not very good, but like there's a ton of appeal to all these guys, and so I could not agree more. That's another theme to me in that range, right? Again, Wentz. I talked about Wentz, so I'm living in that range of quarterback.
So that's the part where at the beginning, pre-show we cut our card, kind of already referenced this, where I was saying I wasn't real comfortable. It's like I could go a lot of those ways. Like last week, I felt really good about the Burrow doubles. It didn't necessarily hit. Higgins had an opportunity to score late. I mean, the chase side of it obviously hit. Burrow had a very strong game. If Higgins scores late, I think that I should say definitely shouldn't say they didn't hit. They hit, but if Higgins scores late, I think they win everything. I felt really good about that. I was in on that hard. We finally saw the Cincinnati pass volume regression. I don't have anything like that I love. I do think there's still upside in this Jacksonville passing game. I do think Teddy's in a little bit better of a situation than he's been, but Teddy doesn't really have that much upside. Darnold could bounce back, but who cares? I mean, you make some good points on Wentz, but like I'm spread thin on who to actually land on. But I do think one of those winds up being a pretty smart way to build.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like we all have our preference, right? Like Darnold, which is kind of funny because you would think that I would be the Darnold guy, but I have a little bit of concerns about that game and some steam. But like I like Wentz. I really like Lawrence. I could not possibly agree more on Lawrence. And like I said, I really like Teddy. Those are like my preference. But like pick one in this 5K range on DraftKings. I don't really see a scenario in which one of those guys doesn't have like a very good game. Like all those guys are not scoring 14 fantasy points. Like it's just not like somebody's scoring 25 to 30. Yeah. Maybe more, maybe multiple. And in that case,
Heineke we could throw in. I mean, like there's other dudes too. Yeah, completely.
It becomes this like, okay, yes, they can't match the 35 or whatever that Josh Allen can and maybe will put up. But like if you get 25 from Teddy and 35 from Josh Allen, you saved $3,000.
Yeah.
Like, that's a huge,
and his weapons are cheaper. Yes. I mean, that's the other side of it. You're saving a lot of money.
Yes. So that's definitely another, kind of big theme, right? We talked about the running backs, we talked about the upside elsewhere. And then the quarterbacks are almost like this, like skeleton key part of it to get you there. Like, how do you get to, all these upside plays at every other position? Well, it's probably with a guy, sub 6K at quarterback. And like you said, none of them are like, oh my God, this is the play. This is the absolute stone lock smash. But like, you can see the appeal of every single one of those guys. I will say,
I got one more question for you, game stack. I'm curious what your take is on the Patriots Chargers game, because I've been kind of intrigued, but I'm like kind of just ignoring it. High total though.
I think that's probably the game I'm the most torn on. I feel like I have strong stances and beliefs on every single game, and that one is the one where like if you just went into a soliloquy about like, dude, this game has so much upside, this is how it's going to shoot out, like I would be like, damn, that makes sense. Like I totally like I see it. All the like it's one of those games which, so maybe now I'm gonna like talk myself into putting one of these teams in. Basically every weapon on each team, I'm like, I like them. Yeah, like they look good. But then I'm not stacking the game. I'm not, so it's like kind of counterintuitive because I'm struggling with, I think Patriots games are definitely difficult, but Chargers games are also difficult because we know that they're going to score. We know that they're going to throw. But the way that they play defense, sometimes their defense is just not very good, so they can get scored on, but they also will like make Mack just like throw a bunch of 4-yard passes to Jacoby Myers, which in that case is like, well, Jacoby Myers might be okay, but the game is not shooting out. You know what I mean? It's just a difficult kind of game to gauge, but like, I mean, unowned $6,500 Keenan Allen looks really, really good to me. Right. Unowned Austin Eckler looks really good to me. Mike Will is a little bit of a tougher click for me, but if you said I want to play, even if you want to play the Mack side, we're talking about, again, 5K quarterbacks. You want to play Mac Jones and Jacoby Myers.
That's why I thought of it. We were talking about this. I'm like, Mac Jones could wind up being the guy, but I don't really love it.
Yeah, I know. But it is nice because you have just play Mac Jones to Jacoby Myers. Like it's easy. You don't have to make a very difficult. You
could throw Henry on that as well if you want to.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a little bit murky because it could be Henry, it could be Brandon Bolden. Last week they ran like a swing pass down in the red zone that Brandon Bolden scored on. We've seen Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar hit on like big long touchdowns. So I think you're right. Like Jacoby's the clear best option, but also like the Patriots are annoying enough that they could the TDs could go to a lot of ancillary pieces. Yeah, Mac's kind of a tough one because he's tough to like. Myers is the obvious stack, but he's also sort of tough. You don't know that you're getting all of the touchdowns. I mean, you don't know that you're getting any touchdowns. Jacoby Myers has literally never scored a touchdown, right? I guess that's the point. Are we ever going to get this dude scoring a touchdown?
It's going to happen today, and I'm not going to play him because on Thursday, I think there basically hasn't been a week where I haven't talked about Chase Edmonds. And basically one of the things I say every single week is Chase Edmonds is not going to go this entire year without scoring a touchdown, right? Like every single week, that's like, why do you like Chase Edmonds? Yeah. Well, they're going to score 35 points. He's going to get a lot of work. He's going to catch passes. And I promise he's going to score a touchdown this year. And so, of course, just like Kyle Pitts, just like every single player that I like. Island game. Yeah, he scores. So Jacoby Myers will do it now that I'm not going to play him. So yeah, that's just how it goes. But the funny, it has been a funny trend from this year. So I want to hit on one more situation. I kind of briefly touched on it earlier, that I think it's in the same game as Kareem Hunt, and it's like basically the same situation that I really want to attack because no one is attacking it. It would be one thing like, okay, now everybody's going to go pile on Swift, everybody's going to pile on, I don't know, maybe Pitts or whatever. But we like Juju is out for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We've seen them, including in this particular matchup, just abandon the run. They're not going to be able to run today against Cleveland. It's just not going to, they may try, but it's not, they're not going to be successful running the ball against them. I don't know if they're going to be successful, period, but I know what they're going to do. They're going to throw to a couple dudes. One of them, mainly I do really like Claypool too, but my favorite is Deontay Johnson. Ben is going to throw to Deontay, and then he's going to throw it to Deontay some more, and the Cleveland's going to double cover him, and Ben's going to throw it to Deontay. And it's going to be quick game. And so on DraftKings, he's like 3% owned or something like that, sub 7K Deontay without Juju in a matchup that makes sense for him. Again, I like Claypool too. I really like Freiermuth at tight end as well without Eric Ebron. They make for great correlations with Nick Chubb. And so I actually really like that game, which it kind of feels weird, but you just get like the pricing, guys being out. So you get condensed targets, blah, 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 on that game with absolutely zero ownership on either side.
I think Deontay is going to get a little bit, but I do agree with you. It's going to be very low. And that is, I was saying before, I'm playing a ton of Chubb. That's the correlation I'm playing. But now that I hear you say it, I'm like, it's like, okay, one more person that's interested in it.
Yeah.
As you were talking, he's going to throw to Deontay. He's going to throw to Deontay. He's going to throw to Deontay, more. I was thinking, well, he might also throw to Najee 15 times, which is what Ben's been doing, just dumping underneath. I almost never play running backs playing against each other. How galaxy brain is it to play Chubb, Najee on the script that Chubb dominates, they get ahead, and Najee catches 12 plus balls? There's not a lot of running backs that can catch 12 plus balls. Najee certainly is one of them.
I don't think it's crazy. I think where we're at now, we've talked about multiple weeks about like the weird running back situation, right? There just like aren't really many workhorses, that the league is trending towards passing, blah, blah, blah. There aren't these guys that, so like last week was a good example of, you could play like Michael Carter as a bring back, even if you play the running back on the other side, because it's like, dude, if it goes well for your stud running back, that dude's going to catch 8 balls and he's affordable. Najee is like that on steroids. He's going to get the goal line work. So if they do get down there, he's going to get the ball at the 1. And we've seen him catch more balls than most wide receivers. Like that just happens. And so I think putting aside the old school methodology of you can't play the running backs against each other because they need positive game scripts or whatever, I don't think that that's true. What you need is the Swift thing you mentioned, the high value touches. I want the guy that gets the ball at the goal line. I want the guy that catches passes. And Najee is that, even though he might run for 12 yards today, he could legitimately score like 30 fantasy points with like 20 rushing yards.
Right. Exactly. And that's what the high value touch point is. You don't actually need rushing yards. You don't need the low value early down carries, between the 20s. You need touchdowns and you need receptions. And that's why it's really interesting to be like, okay, well, Nick Chubb could run for 150 yards on one side. Najee could catch 12 balls on the other side. And you can wind up with 2 of the best running back scores in the entire week in the same game, and probably be pretty unique playing them together.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm definitely not opposed to it. All right, we got just like a minute or so left. I missed some of I am going to hit a bet, and I was leading into it with this. I kept talking about they're going to throw to Deontay. They're going to throw to Deontay. Deontay is my favorite receptions prop today. So if you go to BetMGM, use promo code GRINDERSBET, bet $10 on Deontay. He's catching at least 7 balls. Okay. It's just happening. The only way it doesn't happen is if he gets hurt, which he does every single game. You just have to hope he comes back like he does like 80% of the time. But you bet $10 on Deontay to catch 7 balls, you get $200 instantly, as long as the Steelers score a touchdown. I think that's the scarier part of that bet. The Steelers need to score a touchdown, but I have confidence that they'll score. Promo code GRINDERSBET on BetMGM. The other thing is on Yahoo. I actually think that quarterback thing is like even more important. Like all ththose quarterbacks and then some are like $24 or less on Yahoo versus like almost $40 for like Josh Allen. So we're talking about like we're approaching double the price on the expensive quarterbacks. And there's some other salary. So if you go to Yahoo, use one of our favorite. Mine is Wentz. If you like Lawrence, if you like Teddy, if you look at Lineup HQ, we have Matt Ryan tagged. He's also super cheap. I'm a little worried about him without Calvin Ridley, but he's also extremely cheap in a potentially interesting game. And use promo code GRINDERS25 and you'll get free $25 on your first deposit at Yahoo. All right. We always like to wrap up with some kind of gal brain take, right? A conviction play. Last week, I got mine 40% right. Let's call it 40%, which is getting you, absolutely nothing in DFS. You got yours 98% right. Except with the Bengals. Bengals Ravens was absolutely the smash. And so I'm going to make you go first with, all right, what's the thing we like, what's winning tournaments today? It could be a one play, could be a stack, whatever. What's winning tournaments today?
Yeah. I mean, and last week I felt great about that. This week, we call this our conviction thing. And I've been saying all show, I don't have a ton of conviction. I mean, I'll say Chubb. I mean, he's the one thing that I keep gravitating back towards and you sort of reconfirm. So it might've been your choice too, but I'll make you go somewhere else. I'll say that Chubb and Deontay or Chubb and Najee is this nice little, mini correlation. That's a pretty key part of today.
Yeah. Dogs love that play. And that was exactly what I was going to say. So that is
now you have to do Wentz or something.
Now
the Wentz take was good.
That's what I'm going to do. It's Wentz. It is. I think Wentz will be owned. The Colts will be not unowned, But I still believe that the Titans passing defense is one of the worst in the league. And I believe that the Titans are going to score plenty of points on this Colts defense, particularly through the air. So I'll give you a secondary correlation. You talked about Chubb and Deontay, Chubb and Claypool, Chubb and right. That game, those pairings work really well. Mine is Wentz, Michael Pittman, AJ Brown. And it's not like super contrarian. So if you're playing, but if you do what Ben is saying, you play Nick Chubb and you play Deontay Johnson, by all means, play Carson Wentz and play AJ Brown and play those guys, because you're definitely contrarian enough there. So those are your two pairings, those two games. I really like those two. So we got to get out of here for the crunch time crew. Make sure you're Deontay Johnson. If he gets hurt, don't come blame me, because he gets hurt every single week. But that's the smash with Nick Chubb. Pivot off of listen to Ben, don't listen to me. So you probably should play like Teddy or something like that over Wentz, because Ben is crushing these conviction plays. But that is week 8.
Lawrence.
That is Lawrence. There we go. Is the one okay, I like the most. Lawrence, I like it. I love it with Trevor Lawrence. GPP final takes, rotogrinders.com. In 5 minutes, you can get all your questions answered from the Crunch Time crew, and for me and for Ben and for producer Devin, and obviously for my dogs. We are out of here. We'll catch you guys next week.
We're here back in the Fantasy Bar. 6 plays for you for week 8 on FanDuel and DraftKings, including a stud wide receiver I think is too cheap. Some of my favorite correlations and stacks, another cheap wide receiver in the value range, and of course, my favorite play of the week. Who is it? Belly up to the Fantasy Bar and find out. Welcome in, guys. Week 8 edition Beers Daily Fantasy 6-pack. Thank you, as always, for stopping by the bar and checking out the video. Now, before we get into the plays for week 8, a little housekeeping. First off, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that thumbs up button, and hit that bell icon as well. Get notified when these videos are coming out. We're doing football. We're also doing basketball videos. So if you're playing DFS basketball, if you're new to it, whatnot, we're going to do probably 1 video a week for now to get started. While football season is going on, don't want you to miss out on any of that. Also, head over to fanduel.com/OG. Join our single entry DFS tournament with a season-long twist. $5,000 will be given away to the winner at the end of this thing. You can find all the information there at fanduel.com/OG. And make sure you're checking out our show each and every Wednesday. Notorious Head Chopper and myself breaking down every game on the main slate with our favorite plays and our favorite bets. Lastly, head over to scoresandodds.com/beer for all your sports betting needs. Link in the description of the video. All right, let's get into the plays here for week 8. We're going to start at the wide receiver position with Calvin Ridley of the Falcons. So I was loving these prices when I opened things up. These really jumped off the page for me. Calvin Ridley just 7,000 on FanDuel, only 6,600 on DraftKings. I think this is one of the better buy lows that you can have on a guy the caliber of Calvin Ridley. We know the targets have certainly been there each and every week. We're waiting on the production to follow. I think it's only a matter of time. You continue to get targeted. You're going to be productive. I think it's coming sooner rather than later. This guy's averaging 11 targets per game over the last month of the season. And this matchup could be ideal here. Carolina really struggling against wide receivers, giving up bottom 10 numbers in receptions and receiving touchdowns allowed. That's kind of what's held Ridley back. We haven't seen the touchdowns, but we've seen the emergence of Kyle Pitts. We've seen the emergence of Cordero Patterson as well. This is going to help open things up. Calvin Ridley gets it going in a big way here in week 8. All right, let's go to the running back position. We're going to roll with DeAndre Swift of the Lions. Now, talk about a consistent producer. This guy has gotten it done no matter the game script. They're up, they're down. It does not matter. We're talking about a running back on a team that has not won a game, that has continued to be very, very productive, kind of defying the logic of our normal thoughts on running backs. But I'm not going to argue with the production here with DeAndre Swift. We're talking about ceiling outputs in over half of his game, 22 or more DraftKings points in 4 of the last 7. You love the matchup here as well. Philly has struggled with running backs all season long, talking bottom 5 in rushing yards allowed, receptions allowed, which we know is the bread and butter of DeAndre Swift, and FanDuel and DraftKings points allowed to running backs. So no matter how this game goes, Detroit gets out to a lead, they control the game, they actually win a game, Swift's going to be a big part of that. They're playing from behind. Hey, guess what? He's going to be highly involved in the passing game as well. No matter how you slice it, DeAndre Swift, a phenomenal play this week against the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, let's go to the other side of that game. I like this game a lot. We're going to go with tight end Dallas Goedert of the Eagles. So we had him in one of our videos last week, comes off the COVID list, was pretty productive right off the bat, 70 yards in that game. And we know Zach Ertz off to Arizona now. We know this target tree pretty limited here with Philadelphia. Even with Jalen Hurts kind of struggling a little bit as a passer, I think Goddard going to be highly involved here in this game against Detroit. Now, the Lions on paper been very good against tight ends, but when you start to dig into some of the guys they faced, outside of George Kittle way back in week 1, a pretty unenthusiastic list of teams and tight ends there. So take that one with a grain of salt here. Again, I like this game. We got a 3.5-point spread. We got a total creeping in on 50 here. And we have two defenses that have really struggled this season. Dallas Goedert, a solid play at a difficult tight end position. All right, we're not done with that game. One more play. We're going to pair up Goddard with his quarterback, Jalen Hurts. Now, there's a lot of talk out there about Hurts. Should he be replaced? Should we go to Gardner Minshew? I think that's going to help us here this week. I think people are going to be concerned. There's going to be a change. Look, we can argue about the merits of Jalen Hurts as a real-life quarterback. We're not worried about that here in the fantasy bar. We're worried about fantasy points, and he has delivered that in spades. Solid floor. So in your cash games, this guy's basically giving you 20 every single week. We know the upside's there to get well into the 30s. Hell, I think he's got 40-point upside within the realm of his possibilities. Multiple touchdowns now in 6 of the last 7 games. We've seen multiple rushing touchdowns as well. In fact, leads the league in rushing touchdowns. Tied with good old Sam Darnold in that department, but the Lions have struggled with quarterbacks, as we'd expect. 4th most touchdown passes allowed, bottom 10 in fantasy points allowed. I think Jalen Hurts continues to roll here this week against the Detroit Lions. All right, we'll leave that game for you. We'll find some other plays. Let's go back to wide receiver with Brandon Cooks of the Texans. Now, I know a lot of you guys out there have said, I'm not playing any more Houston Texans. I certainly understand that, but Cooks' price continues to creep down to a point where we have to give him a look here. In fact, lowest price on DraftKings since all the way back in week 1. Now, also getting encouraging news on Tyrod Taylor possibly returning this week, and I think that's going to help Cooks a lot here. In fact, we can go back to that week 1 game, 132 yards for Cooks in that game. We know Taylor.
What's up, everybody? NFL Crunch Time right here on Rotogrinders. Thanks for sticking with us, or if you're just joining us, we obviously have some late-breaking news here that came out within the hour that'll shake some things up. It's been a while since we had some Raheem Mostert-esque kind of late action here, but thanks for tuning in, and we'll break some of that down here. I'm Justin Carlucci here with Mr. Tuttle. What's going on, Tuttle? How are you? Bring the energy today, baby. Let's go.
I missed you last week, man. Needed you to host. I had to take over hosting duties. So I'm glad you're back. I don't have the pressure of getting those ad reads done and everything like that.
Thanks for reminding me. What's going on, Kristi? How are you?
Hey, good to see you guys. Happy Halloween. Kind of a crazy day, like you said, with some late breaking news, but looking forward to breaking it down with you guys.
All right. And shout out to Devin, who is always busy on the weekends. And we were doing some Halloween celebrating. And Devin, when I bring you in at the end of the show, I'm curious if you had a Halloween costume or what your festivities included. I got suckered into dressing up as the Tiger King, and I had some wig on that looked like I had a mullet. And I just looked like some guy from town at the local dive bar. All I needed was like a PBR pounder. And I probably just could have doubled as someone from town. But anyway, so we're talking about some NFL, and we'll get to some news momentarily here. But we can kind of kill two birds with one stone. And of course, we'll take some questions from the chat. We're going to go position by position. But first, some housekeeping stuff here and some plugs and promos. Get on over there to BetMGM and use the promo code GrindersBET. Bet $10 to get $200 instantly when your team scores a touchdown. Over there on Yahoo, the promo code is Grinders25. That's Grinders with a capital G 25 for free $25 bonus on your first deposit over there on Yahoo. Of course, if you're not with us on RG Premium by now, definitely sign up. A lot of custom options. You can mix and match. There's a lot of sports going on right now, and a lot of premium content the team is pushing out, and a lot of quality stuff. Like and subscribe to Rotogrinders, and of course our fantasy football podcast feed, where we have a lot of audio content throughout the week, and it's a lot of fun doing those shows. So let's go position by position here. We'll start with quarterback. Looking at FanDuel, it looks like we have Josh Allen projected as the highest owned quarterback, but it's close. I mean, we have a couple of double-digit ownerships at the top on FanDuel: Josh Allen, Matt Stafford, Jalen Hurts, Tom Brady, and then there's a little bit of a dip there. Of course, all those quarterbacks are in the 8K range there on FanDuel. On DraftKings, looks like a lot of people are going to be interested in the Jalen Hurts discount at 14%. Can't say I blame them. 7,200 on DK. Jalen Hurts is taking on the Detroit Football Lions. And Matt Stafford coming in second in terms of projected ownership against the Houston Texans at 7,600. High Vegas total there as well. So I'll throw it over to you, Mr. Tuttle. Talk to me about quarterback.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned it, where pricing is not an issue, which is FanDuel. Josh Allen is the top overall play. Pretty negligible to get him into your lineups over there. So he's like the cash option for me on FanDuel. Hurts is the guy on DraftKings. He's basically the cheapest of the top overall options, which makes him a strong cash game target. I'm somewhat interested in some of these lower priced options, but none of them pop out too crazy to me. I like in cash on DraftKings, I think it's Hurts, and that's what you stick with. In tournaments, I am interested in going lower. So like a Sam Darnold, is as ugly as it sounds, interests me. I'm a little worried now that ownership in this game in general is going to spike with the Calvin Ridley news. I liked it earlier because I could do, Darnold, DJ Moore, or Robbie Anderson at fairly low ownership, and bring it back with somebody like Cordero Patterson at fairly low ownership, or Kyle Pitts at fairly low ownership. But that's not going to happen anymore. CPAT and Pitts are going to see, I think, a decent spike in ownership just with the Calvin Ridley news. So that does disappoint me a little bit, but I do like that game in general to target. So Darnold is a good option for me. Matt Ryan's an okay option if you're looking lower priced as well. Saying all this, the high price guy that probably gets a little bit overlooked here is Justin Herbert. And we've seen it in the past, Justin Herbert and Mike Williams stacks that just don't get played and they dominate. They're going up against New England. New England's kind of perceived as a pretty decent defense, but they made Davis Mills look really good when he played. They're like the only team that's made Davis Mills look competent. And then the Cowboys followed up with a pretty decent passing performance as well. So I'm not scared of their defense at all. And I think Justin Herbert's probably the top tournament option at the high price.
I like that take a lot. And obviously the biggest breaking news, if you're just rolling out of bed or just tuning in to anything, Calvin Ridley is not playing against the Carolina Panthers today. The 1B of breaking news is Jamal Williams also not playing, and we'll get to running backs shortly, and we'll see how that affects DeAndre Swift, who's been a usage monster and used every which way in Detroit lately. But we're still sticking with quarterbacks here. Good breakdown, Tuttle. Kristi, I'll pass it over to you. Talk to me about quarterback.
Yeah, so I agree with Tuttle and you, kind of with the cash plays with Allen and Jalen Hurts. A couple other guys that I really like for tournaments, and one in particular, Joe Burrow. And, they're pretty decent favorites in that game, 10-point favorites in that game. But he and Chase have just been, just having great fantasy games. I just like that combination and think that we can get it at a little bit lower ownership. So I have a ton of interest in that game in particular. I like Mixon as well, which we'll get to too. I mean, he could certainly have a huge game and take some of those points, but love Burrow. Would also mention Trevor Lawrence, to save some money, especially on DraftKings, interest in that game. We have a cheap tight end in that game too. And I just think, it's certainly interesting going against Seattle. I think he could be a great option for us. And then I always have interest in Tom Brady. It'll be interesting to see where his ownership shakes out, but they just continue to throw even when they were up last game. And he's got a ton of weapons. Gronk is back. I just look for him to put up a ton of points. And, on the opposite side too, there's some great bringbacks there. And if you really wanted to get brave, you could throw Winston in there as a big GPP play, but certainly probably Brady and Burrow and Lawrence are some of the guys I'm looking at. And then I'd also throw maybe Carson Wentz into there too. I mean, he's actually been playing decent. I like that game. I mean, the game total is high. It would certainly allow you to get Derrick Henry in your lineups, especially on DraftKings. So another guy that I'm interested in as well.
Yeah, I like a lot of your points there. Good talking points, and Tom Brady. It's not the first time he's taken the foot off the gas pedal. And we saw the Miami game a couple of weeks ago. I was talking about it with Chief, where they were up by comfortably, 3+ touchdowns, and they were still airing the ball out. And New Orleans is a team that funnels the run, so they may have to just keep throwing because they have a really good run defense there in New Orleans. So good stuff there. I'm playing Joe Burrow in my single entry, and there's a lot of ways you can go. There's a lot of decent offenses against poor defenses this week. We'll talk about some Rams stuff, obviously the Bengals. And let's go on to running back because there's a lot to talk about there as well. Of course, Derrick Henry at the top, Fanduel at 10-5. And you know what? If you're looking for a larger field GPP kind of move there, I mean, with Josh Allen, a lot of people playing some Bills and Cooper Kupp at wide receiver, which we'll get to, I think. Of course, it's a lot to stomach to pay, 10-5, 10+ for anybody. But if anybody could break a slate, I think it's Derrick Henry on volume. So I think he's very interesting at running back. Price-wise, on FanDuel, you have a big dip to Najee Harris. Austin Eckler is expected to play today despite the late questionable tag there. And on DraftKings, Henry is 8,900, a little more back to the realm of normal pricing on DraftKings. But and then we have Alvin Kamara, who finally got utilized quite a bit in the passing game last week. So I'm interested to hear your takes, Tuttle. Of course, talk to me about the Detroit situation where it looks like he's going to be big chalk on DraftKings.
Yeah, we kind of had a week where it was looking like Darrell Henderson was going to be like the extreme chalk, and then things were going to drop off a little bit on DraftKings. But now I do think it's going to be Henderson and Swift is like the chalky two plays on DraftKings. Both are great cash game plays. If I'm getting off one of the two in tournaments, it's probably Darrell Henderson. Just because the Rams have so many options, they can spread it out if they want. Like I've been going back and forth on this all week. He's an excellent play, but does he have 30 points like in his range of outcomes? I don't know. Like he would really have to run hot with touchdowns. They're going to throw a decent amount down in the red zone. So like Henderson, I think is a great play, but I also think he's pretty fadeable in tournaments. We saw him flop last week, and it's a pretty similar spot to last week as well. So I do think Swift is the overall better play if you're trying to pick one to fade in tournaments, which is kind of what I'm trying to figure out right now. And I may have just convinced myself to do it with Henderson. You also mentioned it with Derrick Henry. We're finally seeing like a lower ownership on him, this is a guy, again, I typically like fade and do it not happily when he's chalk, but he is a guy that you want exposure to pretty much every week, and especially at low ownership. So I'm cool with that. Alvin Kamara is way too cheap on FanDuel. He's a very good cash game option, all of that. The guy I'm most interested in, and honestly hearing Kristi and your takes on, is Nick Chubb. I feel like any normal week, we would just like everybody would be hyping up Nick Chubb. Be like, this is the like Kareem Hunt's out. It's Nick Chubb. It's a Nick Chubb game. And I feel like that's going overlooked a little bit. And I don't know 100% why. Like I don't know if people think Dearness Johnson's going to steal carries or if that's going to happen. But like I talked to Jamino about this a little bit yesterday with his ownership projection, but we still have him at like 4% projected ownership. Like, why is this not Nick Chubb week?
That's a good question. Kristi, I'll throw it over to you. I mean, I was going to you next. Is it Nick Chubb week?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I was going to bring him up if you didn't. Yeah, it's amazing that no one's talking about him. And I think he's a fantastic GPP play, and his price is great on DraftKings. I mean, even on FanDuel at 8K, but yeah, phenomenal play. Another guy too, I mean, I haven't heard a ton talked about him, and he's more expensive on FanDuel, but James Robinson, I mean, he's in a smash spot this week, in my opinion. And again, he's kind of in that mid-tier range. So there's a lot of really good options, especially on DraftKings, but boy, he's in a great matchup. Nothing to fear on the defense there. So I like him, and he's probably one of my favorite GPP running backs on the slate. So like him and Chubb a ton. I mentioned Mixon earlier. If that game does get a little bit out of hand, it's likely because Mixon's scoring a lot of touchdowns there too. So I think he's a really, really good play. I would also throw, for cheap, we've got Eli Mitchell in there, and we've got Michael Carter that I think if you're looking to save some money, don't mind those guys. Completely agree on the Derrick Henry take too. You just have to have exposure to him. And especially on DraftKings, his price is really good. So definitely like that play. And then I'd also throw Jonathan Taylor in there too. If he's getting the carries, he certainly has the upside to, be right up there on one of the top RBs on the slate. So definitely throw him into the mix too. And yeah, I think those are kind of the main guys that I'm looking at.
All right, one more question before we go to wide receivers. I'm sure there'll be something to this degree in chat. Tuttle, you have any, sticking in that Detroit game, you have any lean on the other side of the ball? Everyone was calling for Sirianni's head a few weeks ago because he didn't run the ball at all. Well, now he loses his best runner and arguably his best offensive player. And you see some people already victory lap in Kenneth Gainwell season, but then they talk about Jordan Howard this week. Talk about a Halloween trick or treat, like we're talking about Jordan Howard. So I don't know. Kenneth Gainwell, we have any interest here on the Eagles side, Tuttle?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not of the opinion that Howard matters all that much to Gainwell. I don't think Gainwell was going to turn into this guy that's getting 20 carries and just grinding it out. I think they were going to use Boston Scott in that role essentially. And we saw some of that last week. So I think it hurts Boston Scott more than it hurts Kenneth Gainwell. And then I also think it's very possible we just see Jordan Howard is active and gets on the field for 2 snaps. We saw something similar last year where they really didn't use Howard that much, even when he was active. So yeah, I'm not overly worried about Howard being active for Gainwell. The only guy I would worry me about is a little bit is Boston Scott, who I actually did think was a fairly decent tournament option, just if people were going to target Kenneth Gainwell. But I am a little sour on Scott because I think there's a chance that, at least a small chance, that Howard does come in and get some of those goal line touches.
Kristi, Eagles running back situation, you got any perspective there?
Yeah, I don't have a ton of interest. I think there's so many other good mid-range options in there that I'm looking at. And one I forgot to mention too is Damien Harris for the Patriots. I think he's someone you certainly throw in there too. His price is right really on both sides too. But yeah, I think there's so many other plays out there that for me personally, I don't find him in a lot of my builds this week.
Okay, let's go on to wide receiver, and then we'll hit tight end. And, of course, then we'll take questions from the chat after that. Thanks for sticking with us, guys. So, wide receiver, FanDuel, Cooper Kupp is priced all the way up on both sites, actually. 92 on FanDuel, 9K on DK. And just what a season he's been having. Super high floor pretty much every week. Doesn't really matter to me about the game script because to some degree the targets are going to be there. He's had sick touchdown equity, and I will probably be burning a bit of money on Robert Woods and some larger field GPPs this week with the Henderson and Kupp ownership. So we'll see how I feel at about 4 p.m. Eastern there. Then of course Stephon Diggs over there on DK against Miami, high team total there. Tuttle mentioned Mike Williams at 7,700. Then, of course, you have Scary Terry, Jamar Chase. So a little bit of a pricing gap there between Kupp and the rest of the field. Tuttle, how are you attacking the wide receiver position this week?
Yeah, so Kupp is basically like the cash game question on DraftKings. Do you fade or do you play Cooper Kupp in a lower priced wide receiver like Van Jefferson, or I'm seeing builds with Atlanta Falcons guys in it as well, or do you kind of attack the mid tier? I slightly prefer attacking the mid-tier just because I think there's a lot of strong options there. But it'll be interesting to see how ownership spreads out on that because I do think Kupp is an obviously awesome play. It's just a matter of who you have to pair him with to make it fit. I do think Chris Godwin will be the highest owned receiver on the slate on DraftKings. I think rightfully so. I think he's an awesome play. DJ Moore is one of my favorite options on the slate. He's 7,200. I think he's a very strong play, and he's not projecting for too much ownership right now. If we go into the mid tier again, I think this is where a lot of the questions will come. My favorite mid tier I have, it's some order of T. Higgins, number one for me, then Devonta Smith, and then Michael Pittman, and then Brandon Cooks, and then Jacoby Myers. And I think those are, that's going to be where a lot of cash games are decided again today, is basically deciding who to play of those guys and which guy has the best game out of all those guys. And it is T. Higgins and Devonta Smith for me.
Okay. Throw it over to you, Kristi. What's going on at wide receiver?
Yeah, no, I agree. A lot of great plays that he listed off there. Would also throw in, like AJ Brown, a ton this week in that Tennessee Indiana game. Would throw Mike Evans in there. Obviously Godwin is going to be highly owned. Evans sometimes gets to be a little bit overlooked. So certainly like him as an option too. I would also throw Jamar Chase in there. I mentioned liking that game quite a bit. I just like that game a ton. Jamar Chase, he's certainly priced up there, but it's warranted. And, I've got a ton of exposure to him this week. Would also throw Michael Pittman in there. I think, he's just the number one guy in their offense, and his price is certainly coming up, but it's certainly warranted. And with Carson Wentz playing better too, certainly a great option. Throw Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley in there for that Buffalo game. I think they're really good options too. And then on the higher price side, Deebo Samuel, he's just been getting it done too. And we have him, I think, at 10% ownership or so, but certainly a guy I like and have exposure to as well. I know you mentioned Robert Woods too. Especially on FanDuel, just a really good price, kind of in that mid tier there. And then one last guy could throw in there would be Terry McLaurin. It's a guy that'll go overlooked. I think we have him at 2 or 3% ownership, but he certainly has big upside as well. Last guy too, maybe Jerry Jeudy. He's coming back. I like his price on DraftKings today, and so certainly don't want to forget about him. He has a lot of upside as well.
Yeah, good stuff. I'm glad none of you are stuck on the Robbie Anderson wheel of shame every week. Like to mention AJ Brown. Can't remember if we mentioned AJ Brown, but I think without Julio, I think he should have some decent opportunities today in that game in the Dome in Indy. All right, let's go to tight end. We got about 10 minutes before 1 p.m. Eastern, and then we'll take some questions from the chat. So tight end, wow, Kyle Pitts finally garnering that ownership that, and producing. I guess it goes hand in hand here. Obviously, no Calvin Ridley, and that affected Pitts a little bit here and bumped him up the totem pole in the target tree. So Pitts coming in at almost 20% on FanDuel. Dallas Goedert in a great matchup against Detroit. What are your guys' thoughts at tight end? And I'm assuming you'll have both of them in your player pools, at least to some degree here, Tuttle.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Pitts is easier to fit on FanDuel specifically than DraftKings. He's an obviously great play on both sides, but he's tougher to fit lineup construction on DraftKings. And part of that is because we have Dan Arnold. It's weird that Dan Arnold's going to have heavy ownership. But he actually has a solidified role with the Jaguars. He's 2,800. And again, it's just kind of how lineup construction works. We typically, save at the tight end position just because there's not a whole lot of ceilings out there. Kyle Pitts would be the one exception really this week. But the opportunity cost to save money at tight end is typically a lot lower than the other positions. So yeah, I still think Arnold is the cash game option on DraftKings for me, but Kyle Pitts is the cash game option on FanDuel, and he's an excellent play. You mentioned Goddard. Hawkinson would be the guy that potentially gets overlooked in all of this, especially with people going and flocking to DeAndre Swift. Like nobody wants to play two Detroit Lions guys in the same lineup. So I think Hawkinson's going to get overlooked, and he would be like the other guy that actually has somewhat of a ceiling. We saw it a little bit earlier in this season, and he's tailed off a decent amount. But I do like Hawkinson a decent amount for tournaments. And then the last guy I'll mention is Tyler Higbee. He's going to be on the field. He doesn't have a huge role as a pass catcher because the Rams really don't need him. But again, they can pretty much do whatever they want in this matchup. And Higbee provides some decent leverage off of like a Darrell Henderson. If you wanted to fade Darrell Henderson in tournaments, I think Higbee would be a pretty good alternative.
Okay. Kristi, thoughts to tight end here?
Yeah, no, completely agree. Listed a lot of great plays there. Like you said, Tyler Higbee, great price there. Hawkinson is certainly going to go overlooked, especially with Kyle Pitts garnering more ownership now. Would also throw Jared Cook in there. I think he's a decent option for us today, going up against New England. Ricky Seals-Jones continues to be underpriced. Would also throw Noah Fant in there too. Will probably go overlooked, especially with Judy coming back in there as well. Like Goddard quite a bit too. And you mentioned Dan Arnold for cheap, especially on DraftKings and even on Fanduel if you're looking to save, definitely makes a lot of sense. Pat Freiermuth, rookie with no Ebron this week, certainly going to garner some ownership as well. So yeah, like a lot of the same plays that you guys mentioned. I mean, if you really wanted to throw, well, one other guy I should throw up there too is Gesicki for Miami. He always gets it done. He's getting a ton of targets too. We have him at very low ownership. You could throw like him or a guy like Gronk in there too. Wouldn't surprise me to see him throw up a couple touchdowns today as well.
Cool. Let's take some questions. 12:53 Eastern here, guys, in case anyone's losing track of time. All right, let's see here. I'm scrolling up here to the top. DK Cash question, and I'll start with you, Tuttle. DK Cash, Bridgewater. Okay, hold on. Bridgewater, Herbert, or Ryan Gainwell. I don't know if maybe I'm not understanding that correctly.
I would probably I assume it's Teddy Bridgewater and Khalil Herbert.
Okay, yeah, I got you.
I would probably restructure my lineup a little bit if that's your 2v2. Of that 2v2, I'll give the lean to Matt Ryan and Kenny Gainwell.
Sorry, my brain's not working today. All right, Kristi, DK GPP, Van Jefferson and Kupp, or AJ Brown and Cooks?
I would go AJ Brown and Cooks.
Gotcha. Well, if you're playing one, I hope Matt Stafford's your quarterback, right? So,
right.
Okay. Tuttle, who's your spookiest value play in GPP on FanDuel? On FanDuel, GPP value play.
I'm scrolling here. I assume that there's got to be some risk involved here since we're going spooky. Let's go. Does Damien? I don't know if Damien Harris counts. I'll go Damien Harris. He's 6,900. That's cheap enough, right?
Yeah, like it. Good matchup. Kristi, in season long, do I start Cole Beasley or Russell Gage? This is a good question here. What do you got?
I'd probably go Beasley.
Okay, yeah, I'm curious with Dawson Knox out if Beasley's role is finally like not a roller coaster. His snap count has been up and down and crazy. So I do like Beasley today too. Tuttle, Kupp and Arnold, or Moore and Pitts for FanDuel cash?
It's Moore and Pitts on FanDuel.
Okay, DraftKings single entry, playing three running backs. Kristi, which would you leave off between James Robinson, Henderson, or Mixon?
That's tough, and they're all three in my pool. If I had to leave one off, it would probably be Henderson.
Okay. Let's see here. Where we at here? What's up with Philip Lindsay, Tuttle? Anything on the Lindsay radar going off?
None at all.
Okay. Thoughts on T.Y. Hilton, DK GPP, Kristi?
I don't have a ton of exposure, but I could see how you get there. I mean, I think he's a fine play.
Okay. Tuttle, back to you. FanDuel, Wentz, Ryan, or Lawrence?
Trevor Lawrence slightly.
Sneaky game with a bunch of bad players and bad defenses there. I think Marvin Jones maybe scores this week too. He's always a trip. Thoughts on Jerry Jeudy coming back at a cheap price? Is he cash viable, Kristi?
I think he is. Yeah, I think he is because of his price, and I expect him to pick up right where he left off. So yeah, I think he is.
Okay. Is the Indy stack going to be too popular on DraftKings, Tuttle?
No, I'm not. I'm not worried. No, he'll be owned, but it's not too popular.
Okay. Chalky receivers outside of Godwin. Check out Lineup HQ, guys. Cooper Kupp's carrying a ton of ownership for sure. Devonta Smith's pretty cheap on FanDuel. For AJ Brown, check out Lineup HQ and you can get your answers there. 12:57, guys. Kristi, I think I'm over to you. Where was I? What about a Gesicki Manny Sanders correlation, Kristi?
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I like both those players and have exposure for sure.
Tuttle, DK Cash, please rank Pittman, T. Higgins, and Devonta Smith for DK Cash.
T. Higgins, Devonta Smith, and Pittman.
Okay, one more calling for Tuttle. Cup and oh no, wait, I already looked at that one. Sorry, I think that was the same question. We answered the Pitts Cash question with more, and that's what you picked, by the way. Okay, we'll go with this: Crowder or Gage for FanDuel GPP.
I would go Gage.
Okay. Geno Smith, anyone? Tuttle, got any Geno?
I do not.
Kristi, you have any Geno?
I don't. Nope.
I'm also Geno-less. All right, DK Cash. I think I'm on Tuttle. Pittman or Devonta Smith?
Devonta.
Okay. Kristi, a DK Cash question. Cordell Patterson, Kyle Pitts, and Jamar Chase, or Cup, Henderson, Gage?
I think I'd go with the first one.
Okay. 12:58, guys, start locking them in. Tuttle, which defense would you pick? Washington or Jacksonville? But
It's Washington slightly.
yeah, I'm with Washington too. Kristi, J-Rob or D Henderson? DK straight up.
Straight up Robinson.
Like it. DK single entry, still trust Gronk. He might be used as a decoy. Jay Glazer's reporting. What do you guys think about Gronk today?
There's no reason to use him.
Okay,
Yeah.
consensus no. Any news on Ramondre Stevenson? That I don't know. But I think Damien Harris.
We won't know actives list for that game until later.
Okay, and I think Harris is squarely in play. I know we mentioned him briefly there. 12:59, Freiermuth or Arnold for FanDuel Cash. For me, it's Dan Arnold. I think they would agree. I will answer that one just based on ownership. FanDuel Cash, Tuttle, Hurts, Moore, and Michael Carter, or Trevor Lawrence, Jones, and Kamara.
I'll go one.
Okay. David Johnson or I can't. Zacchaeus from Atlanta. Yeah, man. Yeah, I think I'm going there, I guess, right? I don't want to play either of them guys though, do you?
I personally don't know.
Okay. All right. 1:00. Thanks for sticking with us. Tried to fire through all of those. And thanks for bearing with us. Hope we helped you guys out. Devin, come on in real quick. We'll be seeing you later on Sunday night. Keith and I are doing the NBA Crunch Time and the NFL Showdown show. So
wow. That's
love
fun.
Yeah. Love cramming in, the 4 p.m. Anyway, we'll be there. It's a small slate for NBA. I'll figure it out. Devin, man, good to hear your voice again. Were you dressed up as anything last night before we get out of here? I have to know.
Yeah, actually, we had a little small shindig here at my place, and my wife and I dressed up as sort of classic burglars. Just the little black felt over your eyes and black and white striped shirt. Yeah. But I put a photo on my Twitter feed, so for those of you that follow me, you can go check it out.
Sticking his neck out. Love it. Awesome stuff. But yeah, anything else before we get out of here, guys?
No, have a great Halloween, everyone. Should be a great day. And yeah, thanks for joining us.
And go Titans.
Go Titans.
All right. Well, for Devin, Kristi, and Mr. Tuttle, I'm Justin Carlucci. Good luck, everyone. Take care.